We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to another edition of AVRant. I'm Tom Antry, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered, and you might want to come on over to YouTube because there's actually something to look at. Hooray!
Yep.
I'm back. And you can hear it in the microphone if you're audio only. It's all better now. Hooray!
Yeah, if for no other reason than to see the fact that I'm actually showing a background now, so you can see my actual room behind me.
There's something other than
and I'm
white
wearing
behind
glasses.
Tom.
I don't think
has glasses.
I've been on video since I've had glasses, so
that's correct.
Looking forward to that. I guess I won't be able to scan Facebook while Rob's rambling on about stuff like I usually do, because you'll be able to see the reflection in the, in the glasses. So that's exciting.
You have two bespectacled hosts for the price of one. Our $0, mandatory charge. So you're just getting piles for that money right now. It's just all fantastic. So very exciting. I am not going to be sharing a bunch of photos of my newly reconstructed apartment because it's bedlam in here. I've been working every day since I moved back in. Just moved in this past Saturday. I've had work every day until this day that we're recording the podcast. So I haven't had oodles of time to unpack, reorganize everything. I'm kind of staring at it all just at a bit of a loss and being like, it's going to take me just as long to reorganize my apartment as it took to reconstruct it, which was 3 months. It was 99 days exactly, which is a fun number. But in lieu of posting any images of my place, because you're basically just seeing the same bedroom that you always used to see behind me. I don't think you can even see any of the floor. Maybe a little bit under my arm there, under my left arm. Yeah, might see a little bit of the floor back there. Different flooring in there. I'm very happy with it. It wasn't even expensive flooring, but I'm very happy with what I chose. Got happy that my bathroom, which was never supposed to be touched, ended up getting a bunch of updates in there because damage was caused, as I have mentioned. So I've got a new countertop, new sink, ended up with like a new toilet because all the gaskets got super dried out in the toilet that was in there. So it was starting to leak as soon as they turned it back on. So there's a new toilet in there as well. And then they were like just doing paint touch-ups in my bathroom, and they're like, we couldn't match the paint exactly. And I'm like, that's probably because it's like old and dirty.
Right.
They're like, well, we just repainted your entire bathroom because there was nothing else for it. So
right.
Lots of good stuff. So pro tip, if you want your apartment cleaned, because all my belongings got cleaned as well when they got brought, or at least dusted, if nothing else, when they got brought back in, just have a flood and be out of your place for 3 months, and there's your cleaning. That's how that's going to go. So
did any of your AV equipment get damaged?
Yes, it sure did. Yeah, I finally have the actual list of everything that had to be replaced. There's only 11 items on the list, not all of which were electronics, so it really wasn't too terribly bad as far as losses go, but it was the things I expected. There wasn't really anything out of what I had anticipated, to be honest, except that a bunch of curtains that I wasn't using, I had stored in my closet, and they weren't cheap curtains. They were like thick, heavy drapes. They're like, we couldn't clean those adequately. They're done. So those are getting replaced. A couple of clothing items, nothing major. Again, stuff that was in my closet. But electronics-wise, my OLED, my LG OLED, C9 OLED, that was kaput. So that's gone.
Is that
was
the one you drove
expected.
to Arizona for, or whatever?
That
it
is
was?
sure not. That was my Sony Z9D, which survived, thankfully. And that is kind of irreplaceable at this point because they aren't making them anymore, and they're awfully, awfully hard to find. So no, an LG OLED
Think of all the insurance money you could get for them, Rob.
LG OLED is replaceable. That's okay. My Onkyo 818 AV receiver that had water inside of it, that didn't make it. Not super surprising. One of my Ascend bookshelf speakers, Sierra bookshelf speakers, didn't make it. Just one out of the 11. And it wasn't the super custom ones. So all my super custom ones survived. This is a regular Sierra bookshelf speaker, so that is replaceable at least. One of my Klipsch up-firing speakers didn't make it. Those you can't.
You had those.
Yeah, those you can't buy as a single, so I'm not sure how that'll be evaluated. But anyway, and then my Epic Sentinel subwoofer, which was in my theater, that didn't make it. And I mean, don't tell anybody at the insurance. I'm not so mad about that. Out of all the subwoofers I own, that was my least favorite. So I'm like, okay, that's one way to get that replaced, I suppose. So yeah, I think that was about
good luck finding another one of those.
Oh yeah, I know. I'm like, well, here's subwoofers that are basically the equivalent of power and driver and cabinet size and all that. So
I think they're going to care more about MSRP than anything else, right?
I also put that in. So I totaled it all up, sent that off to my insurance adjuster. We'll see what ends up happening at the end of all of it. But light at the end of the tunnel. I'm actually back in here. My face is back on YouTube. That's not such a great benefit, but whatever. Yeah. Here we are, and I'm very excited, and hooray.
It's one thing I've learned, Rob, is that no matter who you are or what you look like or what your shape is or what the weirdness there is about you, there's somebody out there in the world who's looking at you going, that's my jam. That person
haven't
right
found
there
it yet, but,
is my jam. Well, I'm not saying that you have or haven't or whatever. I'm just saying that I guarantee you there's at least one person out there who's like,
seems that way.
That is ticking all the boxes there.
I see plenty of people who I'm like, huh? You've got a partner, huh? Good for you.
I just met a guy the other day, and I met him and his girlfriend, and I found out that later that he was living in his car, and I'm like,
I mean, that's not physical appearance, but okay,
Yeah, I mean, but a lot of times people will go like, you're living in your car. It's not you're not exactly putting your best foot forward there, but he's still got a girlfriend. So I mean, I'm just saying there's hope, Rob. Hope.
There should be. There should be hope for all of us. So
plus, you're in Canada, everybody's nice. I mean, you got to be able. I mean, you don't have to worry about meeting mean people as much.
My big problem, I don't drink, so there's not many Canadians to choose from if you don't drink. But yeah,
you gotta be able to hold the beer. That's what I did when I first started drinking. I actually have pretty much stopped recently, but when I first started drinking, all I would do was get a beer. I would sometimes ask them to only fill it halfway. I'm like, I'll pay for the whole thing, but just fill it halfway, so it looks like I've been drinking it, and then I would just pretend to drink it, and that was enough.
No, you know what? People. I will have a gin cocktail of some kind once in a while. So, I can order like a Bramble.
All the alcohols, Rob. You pick the one that tastes like socks.
Yeah, but it goes well with a Bramble or a gin and tonic. So, very standard drinks. Easy to find. Anyway.
I like a vodka Gibson, and you can't find those anymore.
Oh, yeah, I love it. I love Tom Collins. I'll go for a Tom Collins. Nobody makes those anymore, so I have to ask for a gin sour or a gin fizz. You can usually get one of those. So
you and the gin, man. I'm telling you, you gotta get yourself on the spiced rum. You'll become an alcoholic in a day.
It's the only alcohol I reasonably like is gin. So I mean, that's not that weird.
I can't believe that gin's the one you went for. It's like people who only like salmon. I'm like, out of all the fish, you pick salmon? Like actually, salmon is the fishiest of all the fish. That's but somehow too. You like that one the best.
Yeah. When it comes to sushi, it's gotta be salmon sushi for me. That's the one I like.
That's so weird. All right. Well, I guess let's talk about what we watched real quick.
I guess we can. Out of the way? Yeah, since you don't have anything on your list, so that is super quick. And I watched a movie. This was when I was still at my parents' place. Last movie I watched over there called My Boy Jack. That's from 2007. It is with Daniel Radcliffe in it as John Kipling, the son of Rudyard Kipling. Okay. So it is about their relationship. Rudyard Kipling, more or less, really strongly encouraging his son John, who he just calls Jack, so that's where it ended up being My Boy Jack, into military service during World War II. So, or World War I. Sorry, not World War II. World War I, the Great War.
Oh, that's the one with all the gas.
It was the trench warfare, which they do depict. So, yeah, I mean, it was a really well done movie. It was based on the play by, I think it's David Haig, who also starred as Rudyard Kipling in this version. So really excellent performances all the way around. Very much enjoyed it. And I mean, it's not like happy at all. However, they do put in a fair amount of humor just in the talking and that, at least earlier on, before we get to the actual warfare part of things, which is not enjoyable at all, but not meant to be, and really well executed. So yeah, a fan of that, give it a thumbs up. Check out My Boy Jack if you haven't seen it. It's been around for a while, but I don't think it was like a super popular, everybody and their dog has seen it type of movie, so it's worth a watch.
All right, a couple warnings here. I spent the weekend in Alabama.
Okay.
No, not visiting Lee.
You
because
didn't see Lee.
There's
what the heck?
no force on earth that's going to get me to go see Lee during football season.
Did he know you were in Alabama? He's going to be very disappointed you didn't drop by. Yeah.
I'm not dropping by.
What a way to find out.
I didn't go anywhere near him. I don't even know where he is. Anyways, it's a climbing competition, yearly climbing competition that happens in Steele, Alabama, which is in nowhere by Birmingham, but it's nowhere. And it's an outdoor competition, which is really unusual. And I don't know that we'll go again. My wife and I have been this is our second year, and both years we've been put off by the staff. The staff of this location really, they treat you very much like you're a nuisance, and that's a shame. It's just a campground, and then there's a climbing competition that goes on, and all they're doing is maintaining the campground and making sure that you're following whatever rules that they have, which are not that hard to follow. It's not, it's just like, don't litter. Is the big one, but they like fleece you at every chance they get for everything. So everything is we bought $20 worth of firewood and couldn't keep a fire going for 2 hours with that. I mean, because they're just extremely cheap or whatever. I don't know, but and the attitude they have towards us is really, really negative, and it takes away from the experience. But more importantly, it was frickin' freezing. And we are Floridians now, and my kids have been here for most of their lives. And they go camping at the Boy Scouts all the time, but they go Florida camping, which means it's either during the summer or during Florida winter, which means we don't have any really cold weather stuff. So it was highs of 49 and lows of low 20s in Fahrenheit. So that's below zero. And we were unprepared for that. So it was we had been last year, and we thought last year was cold, but it was certainly doable. It was just cold at night, and during the day it warmed up and it was fine. This year it was quite a bit colder, and I was told that this is not even the coldest year that some of the people who have been multiple years have been to. So I don't know that we'll go again, but I tell you all this because I climbed in the competition, and I haven't been climbing a ton because I've been injured, but I climbed a lot during this competition. And then I cycled this morning, and the chances of me having some sort of massive leg cramp during this podcast is about 98%. I can feel it coming. So I'm very sore. I was sore before I went cycling, and now I'm extra sore. So we'll see how this goes. I'm also going to need more coffee.
Yeah, so speaking of things that might go wrong, I am doing all of this, the Skype call and recording and everything, on a different computer than I used to be using. So there's every possibility there'll be some kind of technical glitch that happens during this podcast. But, fingers crossed. So far, so good.
All right. So this is Thursday that this is coming out, right?
I guess.
And then there's going to be another podcast today, too?
Yeah, double dose, because we're doing our Thanksgiving crossover episode. DJ from the Brightside Home Theater podcast will be here. There will be a guest, or should I review? It doesn't really matter. I'm just going to say a first name. It's not going to mean anything to anybody. There will be a guest with us.
Doesn't mean anything to me.
Named,
I don't know who this person is.
Yeah, named John. It is not John, who is now the co-host with DJ on Brightside Home Theater podcast. It is a different person named John. So, yes.
That anyway, John didn't make the cut?
That co-host John couldn't make it with his schedule with Thanksgiving week.
Right.
So we have another...
DJ's like, not good enough.
Another guest person named John from the Brightside Home Theater podcast side of things. And then we will also have Andrew, who is the other writer over at avgadgets.com, where Tom is editor-in-chief. And Andrew
he sounds much more
articles.
Canadian than Rob does.
Okay.
He doesn't sound like super Canadian, but he sounds a lot more Canadian.
He is East Coast, so that is the more stereotypical of the Canadian accent that you might have heard in media. So we have not spoken to him in video chat form, in recorded form. DJ has. He beat us to the punch. So yeah, that's going to be our other guests, along with, of course, Tom, myself, Lee, and DJ. So that makes up the 6-man podcast.
I thought that Lee wasn't going to be on this year. I thought that no, we got Lee again too?
Yeah, we got Lee.
He's just going to talk about a stupid Tesla. Why do I got to hear about that?
I don't know.
Better not. I tell you what, all you Tesla owners out there, but you better be like ducking your heads a little bit and just enjoying your cars. Because
neither Tom nor Lee, as of the moment we're recording this podcast, has filled out what they're going to talk about in the shared Google document that went out on Saturday night. So, just
I
all
was
prepared.
driving. I drove 11 hours, maybe even closer to 12 hours on Sunday. I am still recovering. Okay, just give me a break, dude. And I'm like a solar battery. And once I warm up, I stay warm for a number of days into the cold weather. But once I get cold, it takes a while. So I've been taking lots of hot showers.
There it is. Tom is Superman, powered by the yellow sun. You heard it.
I am.
He's got the glasses now too.
That's right. But I'm always Clark Kent. Is the problem. All right. This is AVRant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. To get your questions answered, all you have to do is ask us by emailing us at question@avrant.com. You can go to avrant.com and find our show notes as well as our Flickr albums where you can follow along with the pictures that we will be talking about. Now you can see our faces over at YouTube.
Yeah.
If you want. So you contact us. You can find us at facebook.com/avrant podcast, youtube.com/avrant. And again, we've got images and faces and everything.
That's right.
And Andrew should be checking it out for no other reason than he should be able to see those are his wife made those they're printed panels now,
right.
But she painted the original image that's back there. So I don't even know which one it is. The Stormtrooper and I think Boba Fett. Is that right?
I don't think we can see the Stormtrooper one. Yeah, we can see the Boba Fett one. You can't see the Stormtrooper one on the video.
The Stormtrooper one you can't see.
It's my head covering that right now in the video. Yeah.
Anyways, there's two of them back there. And then there's the Imperial Stormtrooper is on the other wall, but you can't see that. Anywho, so Andrew, you show your wife. She can see this stuff. All right. Let's see here. You can contact us directly, rob@avrant.com. You still got Twitter?
Okay, so I do still have a Twitter. It is still at First Reflect. That's still showing in the lower third on YouTube there. But at First Reflect is also what I'm going by on Hive Social, which has quickly become what I think is the most promising replacement for Twitter. Now, Hive has been around technically since 2019.
You were on Mastodon or whatever. I signed up for that after you signed up for it so I could see.
Okay, so I did sign up for Mastodon. I'm also First Reflect there, but Mastodon, I just haven't really been logging in and checking because they have their whole federated, segregated server system, which, yes, if you are following someone, you can view posts from anybody who is on any server over at Mastodon. But to find people, you have to know what server they're on. Now, I'm on the techhub.social server on Mastodon, if you want to find me. So it's First Reflect at techhub.social as far as searching for me, if you want to do that on Mastodon. But what I really dislike about Mastodon, the reason it just hasn't clicked for me is, I follow a few people. Normally, I find other people by checking out who they are following and who is following them. Kind of like a, how would you say, social network, But when you go on Mastodon, you can only see people who are on the same server that you're presently viewing. So it's like, oh, this person has, they're following 103 people. I can only see 9 of them right now. I don't know who all the other people are. How would I know what servers to even check, right? Like, it's not intuitive at all. Hive is, very basically, it's Twitter. It's super similar. Now, there's some features that are missing. Hive right now is literally being run by 2 people. And they're like, oh, we just had well over 1 million people sign up in 24 hours. They're doing some fundraising. They're trying to expand. But so far, honestly, I like it quite a lot. So I'm fingers crossed that Hive works out.
It doesn't have an Android app. It only has...
They have an Android beta, yeah. It's iPhone app. There's no website. It's not on the desktop yet. It's not like Hive.
I know, I can't even sign up for it. I'm trying to sign up for it while you're talking about it so I can get
You got to do it on your phone. There is a beta for Android, so you can get it there. So yeah, that's what I'm going as. You can find me over there. If you get Hive on your phone, search for First Reflect, and I should show up. So that works there, as well as I haven't left Twitter. I'm still there. You can still reach me there. So that's what's going on in the social medias.
I'm going to be there's not going to be an underscore in my name.
Okay.
Wherever I end up. Right now on that stupid Mastodon site, I am like Tom AVRant or AVRant Tom. One of those. It's something like that. Anyways, it's
any idea
rob@avrant.com.
which server you're on?
Same one as you.
Okay. That's the techhub.social.
Whatever.
It seemed like the place to be for us.
I literally don't care. Yeah. I'm not going to use it. I didn't
know.
use Twitter. I just, whatever. Rob at avrant.com. It says email, and then whatever. Just forget about the Twitter crap. And I'm Tom at avrant.com. Don't worry about the rest of it.
Okay.
We're not anywhere else. We're not anywhere else.
I mean, I am. Hive. Come
Just
join
send
me
it
on
to
Hive.
question.
I want Hive to work.
Just send your questions to question at avrant.com.
That is the one. The email for the podcast, that's what's important. Question at avrant.com. Without question, that's what's important.
Oh, I will say this before we go on, and we're gonna go on to our listeners this week in just a second. I found out, and I knew this, but I didn't care. It sounds bad, but I didn't. So one of the kids on the climbing team that my kids are on, their father is the creator of Mother Kombucha. I don't know if you guys are kombucha fans or whatever, but Mother Kombucha is pretty big around here. I don't know how widespread it is, but he brought Aqua Bucha, which are these little cans of like sparkling water.
All right.
And I've been drinking that LaCroix crap.
Yes.
And I say crap in the most loving way I can because it is the least offensive of all the sparkling water things that are out there. This Aqua Bucha stuff is like an order of magnitude better. Now, the LaCroix is like 0 calories. This is 4 calories. 4 calories. You get so much more flavor out of, and it's totally worth it. Anyways, this is the Meyer lemon one, which I fell in love with. I drank, like, he brought cases of it. I almost stole them because they're so good. So if you are anywhere where you can, and he doesn't even know I'm talking about this. He doesn't even know I have
Sounds
a
like
podcast.
AVRant needs our first ever sponsor. That's what this sounds like.
Agua Bucha. It's really good. It's quite good. I did try the lemon. The
now
Meyer
that you've
lemon
given
one,
it away
which
for
tastes-
free, Tom, they're giving away the promotion for free. Why would they ever sponsor
I
us?
literally don't care. He's not going to sponsor us. Why would he sponsor us?
Why not? Somebody's got to have the marketing budget.
I don't know. Anywho, I know they're in some Costco's. I think that or they're about to be in some Costco's because I asked them if they were coming to Sam's because that's where I buy my stuff because I want to buy bulk because I never drink one of these. I got to drink like 10. I just happen to have this one's been in my refrigerator forever because one of the kids brought it home. I didn't know it was there. I mean, I knew it was there, but I didn't care because I thought it was just kombucha. And then I went and looked at it. I was like, oh, it's the Meyer lemon one that I like so much. 1 gram of sugar, 4 calories, Meyer lemon. It's really good. The lime one I tasted as well. There's also a grapefruit or pomegranate? I don't know.
Sounds like you should get a affiliate link on avrant.com and sell it there and take a cut.
All that fat affiliate money.
Yup.
I don't know how it is that companies can have even greater reach and more people talking about them, and yet they pay less money for all that stuff. Like they just keep making profits, and all the rest of us gotta just suck it. Anyways, I want to thank our listeners of the week. To be a listener of the week, support the podcast in some way, like Aqua Bucha, our sponsor.
I mean, they're really not. I ain't seen a taste of that. That's for sure.
We were listening to like Hidden Brain and what is the other one, Freakonomics or whatever, while we were going up, and all the ads in the middle of them as they're. I was like, we could do ads. I mean, we could. I mean, no one's paying us for it, but we could.
Not like we have the running time, and we got oodles of questions. We really should crack on here.
All right, whatever. Support this podcast in some way to become a listener of the week. You can do that by going to avrant.com and clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, which sends you to a PayPal donation site. We want to thank John for doing that this week. Thank you very much, John.
Yes, John, thank you so much for the PayPal donation. We appreciate your financial support.
We also want to thank our 140 patrons over at patreon.com. Patreon's a service where you can become a contributing listener or supporting listener, a monthly supporting listener. Whatever. Doesn't matter. You don't have to listen. You just sign up for this. 140 those right now. That every month a little bit of money comes from them, and most of it goes money comes from them, and most of it goes to us. So we want to thank our 140 patrons, including Karl.
That's right. Patreon.com/AVRant podcast is the place to go to sign up to make an automatic monthly donation. Big thanks to our 140 patrons over there. Karl M., thank you for being one of them.
Dale, first of all, if you can't support us financially, we understand. So just let us know how you have supported us, and we'll mention you here. Dale says he really talked us up to SVS when he called them to ask about some questions about his SB1000 Pro. They were happy to hear it and said they're thankful for our continued recommendations of their products. Brannon also talked us up to SVS when he bought the SB2000 during their Black Friday sale. And, and that's it. So that's it for those.
So Dale and Brannon, thank you for talking us up to SVS. Appreciate that.
And Brannon, again, also sent some photos with permissions for me to use them on AV Gadgets, which if I ever get around to uploading like the last 4 or 5 people that have done that, I will use them, I promise. But I just haven't done it. So thank you, Brannon, again.
Yes, thanks again.
And we got some notes of gratitude for keeping the podcast going during the state of the world as it is right now.
Yep.
From Ryan J., who appreciated our advice about paints and finishes. Matt, Tricorn Black from Sherwin-Williams on the ceiling and front wall for the win, he says. Eric says he's looking forward to seeing our faces again on YouTube. Well,
hello. Have we got a surprise for you this week?
This is us. Don't be disappointed. Set your expectations low.
Yep.
Robert in Perth, Australia says he's never missed an episode. Hey, Robert, why didn't you say hi when I was there, man? I used to live there. Jonathan introduced his friend John to us and told him we're the go-to guys for his home theater questions. That makes sense. Ken, who's a 2-hour plus club and longtime listener. He even listens to each episode more than once. So I guess we help you fall asleep. We got some gratitude from Brannon, Dan, Julian, Karl, and Jorge, who says he's really looking forward to our annual Thanksgiving crossover podcast. He's been watching the World Cup via the Fox Sports app on his Roku. They're doing 4K with HDR, and he thinks it looks great. No hiccups with the live streams. The only downside is that it's 2-channel only. Greg is a member of our 2-hour plus club, and Rob and Lee were right. He compared one of his Polk RTI front speakers to a single CAF LS50 Meta he was about to get for cheap on the used market. He wound up using his Apple TV 4K as a source, since you can go into his accessibility settings and adjust the channel balance there. Made it fast and easy to listen to just one speaker or the other via the left-right channel balance. And you can also make all the audio mono so that both speakers would be playing the exact same thing no matter what. It was not a subtle difference. The CAFs were better in every way. He got a pair of used CAF LS50 non-metas for his front, left, and right, and Rob was correct. They all sound fantastic together. So
congratulations,
all of those people. I'm not saying their names.
I will say names one more time so they came from my lips. Ryan, Jay, Eric, Robert, Jonathan, Ken, Brannon, Dan, Julian, Karl M, Jorge, and Greg L. Thank you all very much for the notes of gratitude and encouragement. They're very much appreciated. Had lots of things on Twitter and even on Hive and Mastodon and that, because I mentioned that I was finally getting back into my apartment this past weekend. So thank you to everybody for all the support. Very much appreciated. And a big thanks to everybody who continues to listen and send in your questions.
All right, some news here. Disney has a new CEO, you may have heard. I mean, even I heard it, and I was gone. And it's the old CEO. So back in February 2020, Bob Iger retired after 15 years of being Disney's CEO and was succeeded by his hand-selected choice, Bob Chapek, the former head of Parks, Experience, and Products. Bob Iger had been known as a talent-focused leader who prioritized creativity and face-to-face communication. Chapek was rumored to be more of a numbers guy, and when Iger announced that he would stick around in an unofficial capacity because of the pandemic, he and Chapek clashed, with Chapek throwing everything into streaming, which wound up angering theater owners. Oh, boo-hoo, I'm a theater owner. Talent at Pixar, and infamously Scarlett Johansson, when her lawsuit over back-end pay uncharacteristically, no, I'm not going to even try it again, went public. Iger had overseen unprecedented growth that included the acquisitions of Pixar, Lucasfilms, Marvel, and 20th Century Fox. By contrast, Chapek's tenure as CEO has seen the company's stock price fall by 36.5%. I mean, there was a pandemic, dude. Give that a break. And its streaming division post a $1.5 billion loss, despite rapidly growing subscriber numbers. Obviously, though, it must be pointed out that Chapek was handed the role right as the pandemic hit, and Disney's board of directors pointed out his leadership through unprecedented challenges, even as they announced he would be stepping down. And Iger is now CEO again, effective immediately. Boy, talk about, taking the easy job. I'm going to go all the way up until everything hits the fan. I'm going to step away, let somebody else deal with the crap, and then I'm going to come back in afterwards after it's mostly settled down.
Now, I mean,
I'm not saying that
Iger to Chapek transition had anything to, it wasn't motivated by the pandemic in any way, because that had long been in the planning. Iger had actually stuck around longer than he had intended to before he retired after 15 years as CEO. So none of that was coincidence. None of that was because of the pandemic. But so I mean, it's a little bit unfair to say, okay, the stock price went down and that, of course it did. There was a pandemic.
Everybody's stock price went down except for Well,
you know,
even the oil companies, but everybody's stock price.
But movies weren't in theater for a year to a year and a half.
Right.
All the amusement parks had to close. So
Right.
yes, things were going to go down. That part isn't Chapek's fault, but there was a bunch of tumult behind the scenes. A lot of the talent wasn't happy with the way he was running things. He wasn't doing the face-to-face meetings that Iger used to do. It was more numbers driven by accounts of behind the scenes people. And Pixar in particular seemed to be really unhappy because they didn't like basically becoming a streaming only studio, which is what has more or less happened to Pixar's movies. They just haven't been putting them into the theaters even after theaters were reopened again. They just went straight to Disney Plus, and right. Pixar wanted to get back to being held in high esteem. So there were public things from Pixar people who were like, yeah, we're happy to have Iger back. So, yep.
That's fine. We'll see. Like I said, I mean, like getting a job right as the pandemic hit and then getting ousted right as the pandemic ends. It's very hard to know how everything would have gone had there been.
Oh gosh, there's no way to know. Yeah,
and how many of those decisions about streaming and everything else would have taken place without a pandemic being around.
Well, and
Chapek might not have done all that
as
stuff.
a consumer, I'm not angry at the focus on the streaming service. I'm like, Disney Plus is my favorite of the streaming services, particularly the Canadian version where we get a lot more content than you do in the US because pretty much all the Hulu stuff just got folded straight in there as part of Disney Star in Canada and most of the rest of the world.
I very much wish they would just do that here as well.
You'd have to think at some point. There were Hulu is complicated because there was a whole bunch of other studios involved, and there's still like little tendrils that are still left from all of that.
Yeah, those need to be kind of cut, I think.
But we're
already losing a lot of it. Like SNL, Saturday Night Live is no longer on Hulu because it's on Peacock now.
Yeah.
Stuff that I used to watch is gone.
Really liked Disney Plus, and seeing what's happening with the opposite with Zaslav over at Warner Brothers Discovery, and seeing them back away from all of that and what that's starting to do to HBO and other parts of Warner Brothers. I'm like, I don't really think that I completely disagreed with Chapek's overall approach, but having talent being unhappy, that's never a good sign. So I mean, look. Nobody is excellent at every single part of the job, but we'll have to see. I don't think Iger's going to have in he's been signed to a 2-year contract. That's all it is for Iger. I don't see in that he's going to be acquiring another gigantic studio and adding to all the ones that he did during his previous 15-year tenure. So, is this going to instantly turn around in 2 years? Very tough to predict, but regardless, that's what's going on there.
And again, how much are you going to be able to say it's because of his leadership, and how much is it just people are getting more and more comfortable? Not just in the United States. I mean, I know we're very, or the Western Hemisphere or whatever. I know we're very myopic. Everybody's like, I look around me and this is what the world's like. That's not what the world's like. There's very many places in the world where people are still social distancing and masking.
Yes.
There's a lot of rules that aren't in place.
Which, honestly, we still should be here, but
Well, also, I was talking to somebody the other day, and I was like, if nothing else out of this pandemic, as a society, we are now used to seeing people with masks on, even if we don't like it or we don't want to do it ourselves. If somebody's wearing a mask, it's no longer like, is this person going to rob me? You're now like, oh, they must be sick.
Yes, please, if you're feeling sick, it doesn't have to be COVID. If you have a flu coming on, if you have a cold coming on, just when you're around other people, slap a mask on. Please don't spread it. It would be so nice. My 13-year-old son was coughing all over everybody the other day. I was like, I am going to make you sleep outside. I don't care if you get pneumonia. We're in Florida. He's not going to get pneumonia. But you've got to stop coughing on, just put a mask on. Oh, I'll cough inside the mask. I'm like, that's your problem, not mine. At least the mask stops you from coughing all over everybody else, you jerk. So, yes, I think that there is some benefits, however minor, that have come from this. And hopefully they will continue into the future, that as, it's just going to help stop the spread of all sorts of illnesses if people will be conscientious and think outside of their own comfort. Comments from listeners. Ryan in Ontario wrote us a while back when the lip sync from his Apple TV 4K connected to his Sony A80J OLED was off and seemed to change depending on the match frame rate setting in the Apple TV and whether it was plugged into his AV receiver or directly into his TV. That was one sentence. Mm-hmm. Rob, that is a lot of words in one sentence. It's still grammatically correct, I'm sure of it.
I know, but maybe that's not what you're. It feels like I'm reading from the New Testament because you run on sentences too. The lip sync when using his Xbox Series X was perfect, so we figured the Apple TV 4K had to be the culprit. We said to turn Dolby Vision off on his Sony and use the enhanced input setting instead. That did not work, but it did get him to experiment with other settings on the TV, and he discovered that turning HDMI AV sync off rather than leaving it set to auto managed to fix the issue.
Why not?
Thank you,
Why would
HDMI.
the setting that is specifically about synchronization not cause synchronization problems? And turning it off fixes those synchronization problems. Why wouldn't that be the case?
Why wouldn't that be the case?
Intuitive.
He also scored a deal on a Denon X3800H receiver from a Canadian retailer, Visions. He wanted to share a tip that going in person to a store can make a big difference. They had in-store sale prices that weren't listed online, and they were willing to haggle. I literally cannot stand haggling. I can do it, but I hate it. So online deals aren't always the best deals. I will tell you that's the case in a lot of industries.
Yep.
In the bike industry in particular, you can order stuff from Amazon and it'll be like, oh, it's instead of $70, it's $50, and you're like, oh, I'm getting a deal. And you go to your local bike shop, it's like $20. Just $20. Sometimes they'll just give it to you because they have so many of them. Yeah. So if you do have local stores, it's always nice to give them a shot first before you order online. What is going on out there?
I don't know.
Oh, it looks like my son is going to mow the grass. So we're going to be hearing that in a few minutes. So
why not?
I don't know. He's not wearing a shirt. I can tell you that much. Hey, you are not going to bark
in November.
Here? Well, it's like 70 degrees out there.
Yeah,
dude.
there you go, Florida. Horrible.
Eric says, if you need some NPT, National Pipe Thread, pipe for your projector ceiling mount, but prefer to order stuff online, there's a company called QualGear, Q-U-A-L Gear, that sells through Amazon. You can order whatever length you need in either black or white pipe, and their prices are just as good or better as going to the hardware store, so he recommends them. Okay, there you go. Mm-hmm. Mike just wanted to share that his gas fireplace was installed and their TV mounted above it about as high as it can go. Mike and his wife are not bothered by the high viewing angle, even though everyone online said it would be a cardinal sin. I have an article specifically called, Is Your TV Too High? And the answer is probably not, because people online are jerks. He taped a thermometer to the bottom of the TV, and it's hitting about 130 degrees Fahrenheit. So they might go for installing a mantle after all. Should help deflect the heat at least a little bit. 130 is pretty warm, I'm going to be honest with you.
It's getting a little toasty.
I don't know about that. I'm going to find that article so we can link it up for that.
I see.
We're straight to question. We got some images here too. Oh, that's a cute fireplace. I like the stainless steel.
Yeah.
I guess they're going to end up painting that.
Oh yeah, that was just in.
Yeah,
it's not fully finished yet in the photograph. It probably is by now.
Yeah. All right. Ryan. It's our first question here. Ryan is finishing his basement, and he'll get to have a dedicated home theater room. I need to angle this differently. I can't really see it. It will end up being 13.5 by 22 feet long with an 8-foot ceiling. Total light control. He'd like to have 2 rows of seats. I am not sold on the 2 rows of seats thing. But anyways, as this is a man who has 2 rows of seats, that couch in the back there does nothing but hold blankets. I have sat on it twice. Total. He has initially envisioned having the front row about 12 feet from the projection screen, the back row 15 to 16 feet. On the 8-inch riser. He then revised that to a 12-inch riser and to give the back row better clearance. What are our thoughts? That's only like 3 to 4 feet. I don't think that's enough room.
Not enough
from the 2 rows
between the 2 rows. Yeah, that's my first thought. So just the rule of thumb, if you are doing recliners in both rows of seats, you really want 6 feet between the 2 rows. 5.5 is maybe doable, but you really want 6 feet if both rows are recliners. Now, if the rear row doesn't recline, only the front row reclines, then you can probably get away with 5 feet. It's only about a foot difference there. Maybe 4.5 at an absolute minimum, but the 3 to 4 feet, that's just too close together pretty much no matter what. Now, my recommendation is that I'm thinking maybe, he's like 22 feet long and going to go 12 feet from the front wall. He wanted to be behind the halfway point. I'm thinking instead of moving the rear seats back to give you that 6-foot distance between the two rows, I would move the front seats forward. I would get them to maybe about 10.5 feet because that's all going to work into screen size stuff, which is coming up later. So I'm not going to go to details yet. But I think having your seats just in front of the halfway point, more about 10.5 feet from the front wall is all going to work out a bit more nicely. And then you can leave the back row where you had intended, still have a good 5.5, 6 feet behind the back row to the back wall, which is really nice. If you are going to install surround back speakers, that's not going to be super distracting for the back row of seats. So to me, that's my thought initially on how I would lay it out. I would move the front row forward.
Yeah. 22 feet. Yeah. Sure. That works too. Would a 100-inch screen be about right, or should it be more like 110 or 120? Should it be acoustically transparent? For reference, I'd like to keep the budget to the for the projector around $2,000. Well, the $2,000 mark, you can project any of those sizes, 100 to 120, without being too much of an issue. But if you're going to sit 12 feet, I'm talking about your original plan, not what Rob just suggested, but your original plan, 100 inches is too small.
Definitely.
Okay, by far.
And even at 10.5 feet, I would say it's a little bit small.
Yeah. So, I would be shooting for the 120, even with the forward movement that Rob's talking about. I'll link up my field of view article, and you can kind of, it links to calculators and everything else that you can use to kind of figure out what it is. Again, this is down to personal preference. You may like a smaller field of view than Rob and I would recommend to you, and that is perfectly fine. But that's not what you asked. You didn't say, I like to sit here in the movie theater, and where should I, how big of a screen should I get? In which case we could tell you something. But you just said, what's the best screen size? And if I were sitting 12 feet from, I was sitting 10 feet, I would be going at least 110 at 10 feet. Sure. I would probably go 120 at both.
Yeah, so at 10.5 feet eyes to screen with a 120-inch screen, that gives you the very nice 45-degree field of view that I personally always aim for. I definitely think 100 inches, certainly if you were staying at 12 feet, is going to be too small. So I would say one reason I really like the 120-inch screen size, HDR from your projector is still going to look good. You can get it very affordably. It fits very nicely, and it's not so large that you cannot reasonably have your center speaker below it, which means that I don't think you need to go acoustically transparent. Now, with 22 feet of length, you could technically do, false wall up front. You could have maybe an 18-inch deep front, false wall, then be 10.5 feet eyes to screen, 6 feet between rows. Still leaves you, 3.5, 4 feet between the back row and the back wall. But now that's getting close enough that I'm like, I don't really want surround back speakers behind that back row if it's only 3.5 feet from the back wall to the back row. So I'm like, I like the idea of having that 5.5, 6 feet behind the back row. Now I'm happy to have surround backs back there. Leave the screen on the front wall, and then 120 inches, you can have the center below it, and it's not going to be any sort of an issue. So I would point you to Silver Ticket. $280 gets you their fixed frame white 120-inch screen. That's really all you need to do. It's not out of line with the price of projector that you're looking to get. So I think that all works out.
Right, and then inevitably what happens when people are looking at a 100-inch screen and we tell them, oh, maybe we should get 120 because that's going to be better, and then they'll start looking at prices. They go, well, 135 is only this, or 140 is only this much more, and I can get acoustically transparent. I can put everything behind it. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, don't. So I'll link up that.
Get uncomfortable when it gets too large, and when you start getting larger, you start running into HDR. Doesn't look like HDR anymore coming from a projector. That's a big one. And then the center speaker starts having to get really close to the ground unless you do go acoustically transparent. So I'm like, keep it all reasonable. Everything works really nicely with the dimensions you've got at 120-inch screen size. So
as a general rule for myself, when people ask me about acoustically transparent screens, I think that the benefits of an acoustically transparent screen and putting all the speakers behind the screen are often outweighed by the cost. The cost, the additional cost of an acoustically transparent screen, and everything that goes along with that, like the false wall and everything else. So if there is a good reason to have acoustically transparent, I think there's certainly a very valid reason to go for it and to get it. But in your case, where you're sitting in a room where a 120-inch screen, you're going to be able to put speakers around it just fine, and it is the right size for your seating distance. Yeah. Spending the extra money on the acoustically transparent just so that you can put the center channel behind it, and I think that in every case or most cases, you're not going to be able to subjectively tell the difference between a speaker that's behind it or below it. I just don't get wrapped up into that, is what I'm saying. I think that you're not going to be able to tell the difference. So just put the screen on the wall, put the center channel below it, put the speakers around it, and you'll be fine.
And in your case, if you went acoustically transparent, with the distance you'd end up at that point, you'd kind of want to get the ultra fine type of weave, and that's a bit more expensive, and you know, on and on it goes. So I think we've hit the right balance.
Yeah. Spend that extra money that you're going to spend on acoustically transparent and the false wall and all the other nonsense, and spend it on acoustic treatments.
Sure.
So speaking of that $2,000 projector, do we have any suggestions? So the Epson that we normally recommend as like the
5050 UB, the 5050
like $25 to $3,000.
It's $3,000 these days. Yeah, it used to be around $2,700 before the pandemic hit, and then prices went up, so it's about $3,000. So it's not going to hit this $2,000 sort of price range, unless maybe if you look refurbished, if there happen to be any in stock, you might get close. But if we're going just regular prices, what you can find for around the $2,000 mark, Epson's step down from the 5050 UB is the Epson Home Cinema 4010. Now, you still get the fully motorized lens and all of that. It's still the 1080p native panels that shift twice per frame to give you half 4K resolution when you're showing a 4K signal. You still get the 16-step slider for HDR. It still does a good job with that. So it's still a very nice projector. The black levels aren't as good as the ultra black of the 5050 UB. And the big caveat here is it's not the best choice for 4K gaming because it tops out at 4K 30. The Home Cinema 4010 can only go up to 4K 30. It cannot do 4K 60, of course, let alone 4K to 120. That's out of the question. So the alternative there, if you want 4K 120, and I actually want all the 4K pixels on there, it'll be via pixel shifting, but you want to see all 4K of the pixels, and you want 4K 60 support. Under $2,000, I point you to BenQ's HT3550. Really nice DLP projector. 1080p native panels, but it moves them 4 times per frame, so you get all the pixels on there. It can do 4K 120, HDR10 support. Really nice projector, and between it and the Epson 4010, the black levels and contrast are really quite similar. It's the BenQ is a good performer. It's not ultra black, but neither is the 4010. The Epson doesn't look quite as pin tack sharp as the BenQ HD3550, so if you really want really sharp images, the BenQ is good there, but it doesn't have the motorized lens adjustments, and it only has vertical lens shift. It doesn't have any horizontal the way that the Epson does. So there's some niceties there, but I think you're sticking with the one fixed screen size. You're not going to be doing a bunch of motorized lens moving around, so I don't think that's an issue with the BenQ. So those would be the two I'd point you to.
All right. Being a dedicated theater room, he's considering going with all in-wall speakers in a 7.2.4 configuration. Should he do that? And if so, should he go with RSL's new in-wall speakers, which are $200 each, and match them up with RSL's in-ceiling speakers, or do we have a different suggestion? Okay, I'm going to talk about this in general, and then I'm going to go get some more coffee because this coffee cup is ridiculously small. And then Rob can go on and on about whatever he's going to recommend. So I will tell you that it's awful. It's often baffling to me that people say, I have a dedicated room that's just for home theater, and I'm going to try to hide all the speakers.
Yeah.
Like, the whole point of having the dedicated room is that you can do whatever you want in there. And do you want to never be able to upgrade your speakers ever for the rest of your life? Do you want to never be able to move your couch? Do you want to never be able to increase your screen size? Do you want to never be able to try out new configurations? Do you never want to be able to add more speakers as Atmos and object-based audio becomes more powerful? Do you never want to be able to add any more speakers to your system without tearing up your walls? If that's the answer...
And I assume you want to play it loud, and you're going to put a whole bunch of holes.
Yeah. I really don't love the idea of doing all in one. If you said on wall, I'd be like, okay, We can do on walls. On walls, I'd be okay with. First of all, in walls, you have to worry about where the bays are on the stupid walls, and no one thinks about that until it's far too late. Suddenly, their center channel is off center because
or the bay is there, but there's a duct or there's a pipe.
Yeah, or there's a fire break, or there's something else, right? They can't run the wire the way they thought they were going to be able to run it. It all becomes an issue. Just get either on wall if you must go with that more clean look, or in-room speakers, because it's a dedicated room that is dedicated to this. Let it be dedicated, and let it have the the upgradability that you're going to want from your room. Don't immediately like pigeonhole yourself into, I have 7.2.4 and I will never have anything else because I can't put that center the top center speaker up there because it's now too close to the other two speakers because of how I place them. I can never add more like wide speakers because I don't have bays in the walls in the right places. My center speaker is off center. My left and right speaker aren't exactly where I want them on either side of the projection screen because of the way that the bays are. Just get the in-room speakers. All right, Rob,
all right. Off goes Tom to get some coffee. So yeah, my thing is I have a different suggestion. I agree with Tom. I would go on walls. I have no problem with that. I would point you because I think we have a somewhat reasonable guess as to the sort of price range that you're looking for, going by the price of the projector that you wanted to get. So I would point you to Ascend Acoustics HTM 200 SE Signature Series speakers. They go for $170 each. There is a package price discount when you buy a whole bunch of them together. And I would probably suggest to you to get 9 of them, even though you only want 7 floor-level speakers, because you're going to have the 2 rows of seats. They're affordable enough that you can have 2 pairs of side surround speakers, 1 pair that will each go just a little bit behind each row of seats. So I would have 9 floor-level, all identical HTM 200 SE speakers, easy to mount on the walls. And then to go in ceiling, because I do think in ceiling makes sense. You've only got the 8-foot ceiling. Your back row is going to be up on a riser. I do think it makes sense to go in ceiling when you can get speakers that have the proper rear enclosures. So like I always mention for pairing up with Ascend, the Sonance Mag 6 in ceiling speakers that you can get from Best Buy, those go for $170 a pair right now. So really not crazy overpriced, but you'll want to add the rear enclosures. Those go for $60 a pair. So right there, we're talking, $200 and $30 for a pair of the Sonance Mag 6 in-ceiling speakers with the rear enclosures, and that's the system that I would put together for that. So he goes on to ask, RSL mentioned that they could provide a package deal that would include 4 of their Speedwoofer 10S Mark II subs. Would that be a good idea as far as subwoofers go? I kind of made the assumption that that's probably only if he's buying a whole bunch of RSL speakers, so if he's not doing that, maybe the package price isn't quite as good. Now, 4 Speedwoofer 10S Mark IIs is gonna be a good, like that's not bad choice at all. I'm just going to say that if you don't have the excellent pricing that goes on there with the subwoofers I would have pointed you for this room size absolutely would have been an SVS PB1000 that you can get on the Black Friday sale for $500 right now. Not necessarily the PB1000 Pro. Snap up a pair of those PB1000s on the Black Friday sale for $1,000 for 2 of them, and that's would be excellent. The great alternative to those would be Monoprice's Monolith M10 V2s. Those go for $550. So that'd be $100 more to get a pair of those. So that's where I point you there. Those subs dig right down to 20 hertz, and the Speedwoofer 10S misses it by like 2 to 3 hertz, So, but if the price is really good and you're getting 4 of them, that is going to be a really good performer. I don't want to put anybody off of those. So, again,
I will say for the millionth time that while 4 subwoofer sounds like a great idea, it's often overkill for most rooms.
Sure.
And it will help that back row have more even bass.
It could.
But how many times are people actually going to be sitting back there, and how much do you actually love those people? That's what I He asked, what would we suggest for the AV receiver? Can he maybe make use of the new Denon's X3800 HS4 subwoofer outputs? And if he stepped up to an Epson 5050 UB projector, what if he stepped up to an Epson 5050 and the use for the HDMI 2.1 switching there?
So the Epson 5050 UB is still HDMI 2.0. It's 4K 60, not 4K 120. Yeah. So none of the projectors you're considering need HDMI 2.1 switching. The X3800, the 4 subwoofer outputs, You really don't need them. You can do Y splitters. It's not difficult at all to do Y splitters if you end up with 4 subwoofers. So there's not a justification. The 3800 is $500 more than the X3700H. I would absolutely get an X3700H all day long right here.
So for speaker wire, subwoofer cable, and HDMI cables, should you just go with monoprice? And
yep.
That's a fairly easy yes. But it's also like, you don't have to. You know what I mean?
Amazon Basics and stuff is fine for all of that.
Especially for speaker wire and subwoofer cables. They're not, this is not like some highly technical cable to make.
I do like what Monoprice offers in their speaker wire selection now, because you can get a black jacket or a white jacket or a clear jacket. You can get 14 gauge, 16 gauge, 12 gauge, 10 gauge, whatever you want. They make it very easy. I will, a little tip on the subwoofer cable, in the audio cable section, look up the digital coax cables. That's actually the type of cable that you want to get, is a digital coax, rather than just the regular twisted pair RCA, which isn't really, you want the RG6 cable or the RG59 cable. So look up the digital coax. That's a little tip for those. I will just mention Projector. He might need a long in-wall HDMI cable. At this point, even though none of the projectors that you mentioned need HDMI 2.1, I'm like, it's going in your wall. Conduit first, so that you can change the HDMI cable if you want to, Smurf tube. But putting in an HDMI 2.1, an ultra high speed HDMI cable right now, why not do it? And so, like I mentioned, the Monoprice ones, the fiber optic, ultra high speed certified ones that Monoprice sells are not in-wall rated. So over at Amazon, there's a company called AVRant. They sell a 50-foot certified ultra high speed fiber optic cable, CL3 rated. That goes for $85, so it's not crazy overpriced. And even if that's a bit too long, go ahead and spool up a fiber optic cable. There's no problem with that.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't scroll. All right.
Yeah.
Rob, not you, different Rob. Yep. Rob has been using a 65-inch LG B9 OLED in his light-controlled media room. He loves the way its black bars completely disappear into the background. He sits 7.5 feet away. 8 feet if he's in the most comfortable position in his chair, which means reclined.
Yeah.
He's got a Marantz SR6011 receiver with a PC that plays his backed up discs, an Apple TV 4K, Amazon Fire TV 4K, Xbox One S, pretty much strictly for Rock Band at this point. I miss playing Rock Band. All my instruments broke. And an Xbox Series X. He'd like to get a bigger screen, and his max budget is $3,500. That puts an 83-inch OLED just out of reach at the moment, so he's struggling with the eternal question, does he get the 77-inch OLED, or should he even consider an 85-inch LCD of some kind? The 77-inch LG C2 is attractively priced right now. If he sticks with OLED, any reason to pay more for some other brand or model? I just want to say that I don't think that you should go LCD, like full stop, because I think you're going to be disappointed. That's
certainly my inclination as well. I just want to mention the C1 OLED over at Amazon. It's down to $36.75. Is $175 just? There's no way you can scrounge up $175. I mean, I know you already went to the max of your budget, and then I put you $175 over. But $36.75 for an 83-inch C1. I'm like, oh, is that tempting? Also, they have ones that are listed from other sellers other than Amazon as, open box like new, which is the little thing of how they get around the map pricing. That like they have never been opened. They're just being sold that way, and those are down at $3,200. So I'm like, you can get an 83-inch. It's not the C2, it's the C1 from 2021. But I'm like, I think that's what you got to do.
Yeah, I don't think that you should get the 77-inch because it fits in your budget right now. Right. I would either do what Rob said, or I would just wait. I would just wait until the price comes down enough for you to be able to
because they were already $4,000, like $3,500 for those C1s. That's in striking range, and that's what you want to do. I don't think you want to go to an LCD of any kind. As good as many of them are, I don't think you want to.
His Marantz SR6011 only has a regular HDMI ARC, no eARC. So for his Xbox Series X, he has to make a choice: plug it straight into the TV and to get 4K 120 and VRR, which his Marantz 6011 cannot pass through, but be limited to regular ARC audio and the annoyance that ARC often creates. Or plug his Xbox Series X into his Marantz to get the best audio, but be limited to 4K 60 with no VRR, which is variable refresh rate for those of you playing along at home. He doesn't have any intent to pay for a new AV receiver right now, and if he's being honest, he only ever uses 4K 120 or VRR maybe 5% of the time. But what do we think is the best way to connect things in this case? Man, I wouldn't care about VRR one iota. Even if I use it more than 5%, I would be like, oh, whatever, man. I'd much rather have the good audio. Much rather.
Yeah, in this case, I gotta say, I think plugging it into your Marantz makes the most sense. Because regular ARC, that is quite limiting in terms of what the Xbox is capable of doing audio-wise. So that's the choice I would make here. 95% of the time, you're not going to notice that all the green check marks are no longer lit up. Yeah,
and ARC just in general.
Yep,
just
bit of a pain.
If anything that you can do to not have to use HDMI CEC is just the best way to go. Raph got some complaints from his neighbors. It's not our fault. He can understand. With his current schedule, he's been starting movies at about 9:30 at night, and he lives in a townhouse, so when he cranks it up, he can literally feel his walls vibrating if he leans against them. Seems his neighbors aren't into that. Who would have guessed? So he played around with Audyssey's dynamic EQ and dynamic volume settings, with dynamic volume set all the way to high and keeping dynamic EQ turned on with a reference level offset of 0. He was able to turn the master volume down to -35 while still hearing voices cleanly and still hearing a decent bass. The most fun, loud parts and deepest bass from 20 to 40 hertz is mostly gone, but it avoids getting complaints from his neighbors. So he's wondering if there are any other combinations of settings he should try that will give him even better sound, but still keep his neighbors happy. LFC.
Yeah, the low frequency containment, which it's just a low frequency roll off.
Right.
It's nothing super fancy.
Yeah.
It's a low frequency roll off. That's all it is. I guess he's trying to maintain as much of the bass as he can without bothering the neighbors. But yeah, if you're playing, 20 to 60 hertz bass at reference volume, it's going to bother the neighbors. There's no way around that. So if you want to get a little bit more of your dynamic range back, because dynamic volume set all the way to high means you have exceedingly little dynamic range.
Yeah.
The quietest sounds and the loudest sounds are, maybe 3 decibels apart. So I think giving LFC a try, turning dynamic volume down a little bit, I would probably keep it on at least lower medium. I would have some dynamic range compression without any doubt about that. But I don't think it needs to be all the way at high. I think medium could get done if you use some LFC. So that would be
I also think that you might be able to turn the volume up a little bit. Just in general.
Right.
With the LFC turned on. So you'll get more, not just more dynamic range, but you'll get more absolute volume in your room without disturbing the neighbors as much.
Yep.
So again, this is something, and we talked about this a number of times on this podcast, is, hey, your neighbors have complained. You go back to them and say, listen, let's do some tests real quick. You tell me.
Yeah.
You tell me when it's too loud.
Yeah.
Or when you're noticing it. And, try the different settings. Trevor is visually impaired, and his wife isn't particularly picky about picture quality when they're watching TV or a movie. No one is until the bit rate goes down to 480p. All of a sudden, everybody's like, what the heck's wrong with the picture? So audio is the priority in his home theater setup, and he has a 5.2 configuration using a Denon X4200W receiver to power SVS Prime bookshelves and center speakers, with the Purion Intimus 5B surrounds and a pair of SVS SB3000 subs. Holy crap.
Yeah.
The room is not quite enclosed. There is an open doorway, but that doorway is open to the rest of the house. So, first off, even though the picture settings aren't the highest priority, he'd still like to know that his wife and any visitors are seeing something close to an accurate image. Are there some easy picture settings he could adjust so he'll know they're getting something close to the best picture quality possible from their 75-inch Sony X90J? Rob's going to tell you where, but there's always somebody online who has gone through and calibrated and then post their calibration settings, and you do that.
If you want all the settings listed out for you, artings, ratings, they've done that for the X90J. They've got their settings section. I'll have a link in the show notes, but if you just search artings X90J review and you go to the settings section, you can go through the whole thing there. But I'll be honest with you. For what you've described, all you really need to do on their Sony is put it into the custom picture mode. Now, that's not intuitive. That's not the one you would necessarily guess. You would probably guess movie or theater, I forget, or cinema, whatever they labeled it as. But the most accurate picture mode out of the box, and honestly, it's darn accurate. You don't really have to do anything much more than this unless you're a real stickler. Is just put it in the custom picture mode, and that's about it. That works for both SDR and HDR and Dolby Vision. And that's all you have to do. So yeah, that's really the easiest thing to do. If you want to get more in depth, I'll have the link to the Arting settings, but that's a pretty easy solution for what you asked for.
Yeah, it's online. Next up, he doesn't feel he's quite getting the impact in his bass that he should be. He loves his SVS SB3000 subs, but would a pair of PC 2000 Pro cylinders be better, thanks to them being ported versus sealed? He can't afford to go more expensive, so what's the best choice in his situation? I mean, it's the opening. How much does a door cost?
Well, this is the thing, like the PC 2000 Pro, if you just measure them anechoically,
right,
does have more output right down at 20 hertz. You know, that's a fact. That is more or less by virtue of being ported versus sealed. I don't think you're going to notice
any difference if you put them in the same spot, though.
When you're talking about feeling bass impact, that has nothing to do with 20 hertz. That's 40 to 60 hertz, which the SB3000 can bang out there just as well as the PC 2000 Pro can. In fact, it can do it a little bit more, right in that, kick you in the chest tactile region. So if what you want is to just feel a bit more tactile impact, all you need to do is apply a bit of EQ. That's really the solution here. Now, you don't even have to touch your room correction setting. Your SB3000s have their own EQ built in, and all you have to do is give a nice little bump, maybe a 3, 4, 5, 6 at the most decibel bump, centered right around 50 hertz. Just put it centered there, a fairly wide Q, a fairly wide hump, and you can do that right in the SVS app without having to touch any of your other settings. And that's all you need. Centered at 50 hertz, put in a hump there, 3, 4, 5 decibels, and I think that's going to give you all the tactility that you're looking for.
Yeah. And if the problem is, and if you do that and you don't notice anything different, you're sitting in a null.
That would be the other part of it. Yes.
you're
now it's time to start playing some bass sweeps and read the How to Set Up Dual Subwoofers over at AV Gadgets, which includes a link to my 12-step guide at AVRant.
That's right. And I mean, and I would do that first. I mean, before.
Well, sure. Yeah, play some sweeps first, for sure.
Yeah, because the playing of the sweeps and listening, just to make sure that you're not already sitting in a bad spot, will help you, save you a lot of time and effort down. Yeah,
we just want to be clear. Replacing your SB3000 with the PC 2000 Pros for what you described is only going to be a disappointment. It's not going to give you what you wanted.
No, I don't know if it'll be a disappointment. It's just going to be a lateral move. It's not going to. You're not going to notice a difference. You're going to be like, oh, why did I spend all this money?
20 hertz ain't the issue here.
Yeah, they've been using an Apple TV HD, and now they'd like to get the new Apple TV 4K that just came out. What settings would he need to use to get the best out of it? In particular, on the audio side, would be better to connect it to his X4200W, which is a little bit older now, but did get a firmware update after it was released to allow for Dolby Vision pass-through. Or should he plug the Apple TV 4K directly into his TV and rely on ARC? Please don't rely on ARC.
You don't want to. Thankfully, on the audio side of things, the Apple TV is very simple. You just leave it in auto, which is the default setting. And that's all you need to do on the audio side. Plug it straight into your X4200W. There's no issues there. You're not dealing with 4K 120 and VRR from the Apple TV 4K. So that'll go through your receiver just fine and will maintain the full lossless multi-channel PCM audio that the Apple TV is capable of outputting. That's what you want to do as far as the audio side. On the video side, it is a little bit tricky. What I recommend for people to do is to actually set it to 4K SDR output as the default. It'll give you all sorts of prompts about going into Dolby Vision mode, about going into HDR mode. It'll give you those prompts. You just want to put it manually into 4K SDR mode. And then a little bit lower down in the video and audio settings, there is the match content. And you want to check off both match dynamic range and match frame rate. And now the Apple TV 4K, out of all the streaming boxes, it does the best job by far of actually giving you the original content in the frame rate and in the SDR or HDR format that the content is coming to you from the streaming service. Now everything is the way it should be. So those are the settings to go with.
All right. Dale still hasn't moved his theater setup from his open living room into the small enclosed spare bedroom that will become his dedicated home theater. But he went ahead and bought a Denon X3800H receiver and one SVS SB1000 Pro subwoofer for now, with plans to get a second or possibly switch to duals of a different model. He just wanted to audition first. The spare bedroom is only about 10 by 12, which is typical for small bedrooms, which is why the very small size of the SB1000 Pro is attractive. But he tried out both the new receiver and the SB1000 Pro in his open living room, and now some doubt has crept into his mind. You have lost your mind. If you're going to tell me that you put a small subwoofer in a large room and are now going to extrapolate to what you're going to experience in a small room with that small sub.
Yeah.
It's exactly what's happening here. The SB1000 Pro didn't seem very impressive. The volume was set to -20 in the SVS app. He had to run Audyssey. He tried bumping up to -10 in the app, but he wasn't getting a lot of deep bass. SVS said that when he's in the spare bedroom with the door closed and he adds the second sub, he won't really have anything to worry about. You only have to add the second sub. Will it really make that much of a difference, or should he maybe upgrade to a larger subwoofer model? Why? Why? Let me ask you a question. If you bought a minivan and then took it to Talladega and raced it, in whatever the races that they have there, right? And you went back and said to the dealer and said, it just didn't seem like it was fast enough to keep up with the other cars. Is that an accurate test for your minivan that you just bought, or should you have driven it on the highway with other cars of the same caliber? You take your small sub, you put it in your small room, and you play it, and it will,
even without the room set up, you can do that test. To see
you got
if
a
it's
receiver
loud and
just
deep
floating
enough.
around at this point, right? You just got a
That's
new
right.
one or an old one.
Yeah,
you upgraded the receivers.
Like, maybe he was listening to Tom always saying, get all your acoustics set up before you do any evaluation. No, if you're just talking about can it get loud and deep enough, you can tell that without the room being treated first. This is just about room size. The dimensions of your room make more difference to your sound than maybe even your speakers. Like, the dimensions of your room are a massive, massive component of your audio system. It cannot be ignored, and it makes a gigantic difference. Now, I get it. Intuitive, you're like, that's where the sound is coming from. So if I listen to it, aren't I able to tell what's coming out of that thing? When it comes to bass, no, you cannot. That is like taking a naked driver outside and going, well, now I can tell what it's going to sound like when it's inside of its own cabinet, because you are missing the cabinet of the bass system. The cabinet is the room, not the subwoofer. The room is the cabinet of the bass producing system. So it will make a gigantic difference. And when SVS is telling you, dude, you don't have anything to worry about, you can get our smallest, least expensive sub, and we, SVS, are confident that you'll be happy with the results, you can take that to the bank, as well as what we're saying.
All right. I almost don't want to even answer the second question because it's the same answer as the first, but whatever.
Close.
He was used to setting his Integra Pre-Pro with his Integra amp to about 3/4 on its volume dial. Again, in his open living room, after he hooked up his new Denon and ran Audyssey, setting it to 3/4 on its volume dial didn't seem very loud. Not at all like what he'd been used to. He tried using the Denon as a Pre-Pro and connected it to his Integra amp. He did run Audyssey again. It did seem to be louder now, but also brighter. So again, some doubt has crept into his mind. With a small enclosed room, make it this all okay? Well, there's going to be. There's going to be so many differences, hopefully, in your small enclosed room. So, first of all, running Audyssey back to back does not guarantee that you're going to get the exact same settings or the exact same sound out of it.
Especially, I'm betting he wasn't taking all the time to do all the mic positions.
Yes.
He was probably doing the minimum number
of
of
like
mic
3,
positions,
I think,
which
right?
can make a big difference.
There's that. But also, you're going to be in a small room, which is in some ways going to be easier for your subwoofers, but it's also going to be harder for acoustics and everything else. But you are going to treat it because it's a dedicated room, right? So you're going to put room treatments.
But I mean, you definitely aren't sitting more than 12 feet away from any of these speakers. It's physically impossible in the small bedroom. So as far as
the question you have
level,
to ask yourself
no problem.
is, will your speakers be able to hit reference level in that room?
Sure.
And the answer will be yes.
Yes,
I don't even care what the speakers are.
And the other thing was, again, very commonly people are like, this is where I'm used to setting the volume dial. That doesn't have really any bearing once you do an Audyssey calibration and have proper reference volume. Reference volume now means the volume dial should be at 0. That is not all the way up because there's a plus amount above 0, but 0 is where it's supposed to be for 85 decibels average during movies. So if you were just like, I just intuitively kind of set my levels, I balanced all my speakers, but I didn't really know what reference actually was before, and now you kind of do, it's not going to be at the 3/4 point of the volume dial.
That doesn't mean anything.
It's not going to be at 75. It's going to be at full reference volume. So there might be a little tweak that you have to do inside of your mind there to realize that having your volume dial at 0 is not a problem. That's where it's meant to be, and that's going to be really loud, really loud.
It's going to be too loud. Yeah. Well, the other thing to remember for those of you that aren't as familiar with Onkyo and Integra gear is much of their gear comes out of the box without the relative volumes. It comes with the absolute volume, which is the
I'm
0
not sure
to
if he
100.
had one that had Audyssey, or if it was with the old ACU EQ system, which was kind of garbo.
Right. So there's a lot. So saying that I wouldn't know where on my dial is 75%. So the only reason him saying that I turn it up to 3/4, which of course is 75%, makes me think he's got that absolute volume and he's setting it to a number that he knows is 3/4 of that total numbers that are on the dial.
Yeah.
Nobody else who uses the relative volume that comes from the reference being 0 knows what 75% is, because you have to know how much farther past, and then you do some math, and nobody's doing that. So that makes me think he's using that sort of volume. So yes, this is immaterial. Get the room, get the stuff set up. It'll be fine. Don't worry.
Agreed.
And plus, I cannot stress enough how many times I have said, and I will continue to say, buying a too big sub, just you're paying to turn it down, and that's all you'd be doing, is getting a bigger sub, and then you would turn it less loud, because that's where you would end up. You'd end up with headroom for days. What will you do with that headroom? Literally nothing. Joseph has an Epson 10500 laser projector?
10,500. Yeah, that was the predecessor to the 11,000. It came after the 10,000.
I hate it. 10,500 laser projector. It uses a native 1080p LCD panel, but it has pixel shifting for when it's showing a 4K signal, and it can display HDR 1010. Full stop. I tried to say plus, but there's no plus there.
Nope.
For some reason, even when inputting a 4K source via the active HDMI cable that he bought from Monoprice, he is locked out of all the 4K picture settings and can't get HDR. The info screen indicates that he's getting a 4K resolution, but it's stuck in SDR. And, like he said, he can't adjust any of the 4K picture settings. He did notice that the input signal appears to be set to component, as though it is using the component video input on the back, and yet it clearly says his source is HDMI, and he's getting an image on the screen using his HDMI cable from his source. He tried doing a reset all from the settings menu, but that didn't help at all. Any ideas?
So I had to dig into the manual for this one, and there was a weird little thing that I did come across. Now he sent some images in, but when you just go into the the settings menu, the little tabs on the left, there is one actually just labeled as settings. He doesn't have any images of that he sent in, but there's one right there that is just labeled settings. So in the manual, I did come across that there actually is one in there for the input signal, the thing that's locked on component right now. And you have the choice of setting that to video, movie, component, or auto. And it should be set to auto. That's what that ought to be set to. And it did mention in the manual, if you set it to component for some reason, it's right there. It goes, if you do an all reset, it doesn't reset that setting. I have no idea. There was like a handful of settings that the all reset doesn't reset.
That was one of them.
And the input signal was one of them. It just leaves it stuck there on component. So really weird. I did have to dig through like the footnotes of the manual to come across that, but it did mention it. So crazily enough, you should be able to just go into that settings tab, go to the input signal part of that, and change that back to auto. That's all it needs to be.
All right, so that's his question, but I just want to say, my dude, what's wrong with the bottom right corner of your screen? What's going on with that?
Let me put the picture back up there.
What's happening? What's happening there?
Looks like a wrinkle. Looks like.
I mean, I'm going to ignore the fact that you have a gray screen in what is clearly a light-controlled room. I'm going to ignore that and just say, my dude, what's that corner thing? What's happening right there? What's that about?
Yep.
Can we talk about the elephant in the room here? Let's not worry about our HDR. Let's worry about that corner right there. It's good because that would drive me absolutely bonkers, like beyond a doubt. Yeah, this is a good looking setup, and he clearly vacuumed, which I appreciate. And I like those panels. I think those are panels on the left wall.
Sure, looks like it. They've got the thickness to them. I wouldn't say those are
printed panels on the left wall.
Those images wrap around. Yep.
That is that's a good looking couple of panels there.
For anyone who says I don't want ugly looking panels in my room, here's a nice example. They don't have to look ugly at all. They can look really nice.
Is he one of the ones that sent me images to be used on AV Gadgets? Because I could probably use this. Yeah. He's probably afraid that if I use it, I'm just gonna point out that corner over and over.
Gonna have to blur it in Photoshop.
That's right. I'll have to fix it in post. Karl asks which dual sub should Karl buy to replace his single REL Strata 3. I think you should get two of the largest power sound audio ones, the ones that look like refrigerators.
You will read why that might not be what he wants.
He wants to take advantage of Black Friday. He wants to keep the price around $2,000 for the pair, $2,200 max. He'd like to keep the footprint reasonably small. The room is approximately 2,200 cubic. You want PC 2000s.
Here we go.
I don't know if that's going to, because you said small, a small footprint and a $2,000 price point. That's about right. The PC 2000s, get a couple of those. There's an area rug and furniture, but that's about it for soft items at the moment. Hardwood floor, three tall windows, and there's a door to close off the room, but it's hollow core. Boy, I wish I had a solid core door in my room, but I don't. There's a small office area on the left that is open to the theater area, but it isn't open to anything else. He's open to moving things around, and he does intend to try to add acoustic treatments in a not too distant future. What he really wants most is more uniform bass. Fully pressurizing the room isn't vital. That's going to happen anyways, my dude. It's not a big room.
It's not a gigantic space. We're all right.
So he's mainly considering dual HSU ULS15 Mark II sealed subs, SVS SB2000 Pros, SVS PC 2000 Pro cylinders. What would be our choice? PC 2000s, my dude.
Yeah.
That's what I would do like all day, every day.
You can pressurize this room down to 20 hertz with the PC 2000 Pro cylinders. Yes.
Yes.
That's what I would get. The
simplest answer is the right one, and in this case, there's a little. I mean,
now look, I will say none of those are bad choices.
They're not bad
quite
choices.
Honestly. Any of those good choices.
They'll be fine. Okay, yeah. So I guess if you're like, but my significant other likes the size and shape of the blah 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 better, get that one.
Yep.
Okay, but if you're asking us what we'd buy. The two guys that have cylinder subs in their home theaters, guess which ones we're going to buy. I got no problems with box subs. I got no problems with them. I will tell you, my cylinder sub is right next to that door behind me that you can see on YouTube right now. It's right next to it. And I just love not having to worry about running into the dang thing. I can't tell you how many times.
And moving it around is easier. The cylinder is easier to move. Yep.
That EP500, how many times I hit my stupid leg on that and cut it open.
I've still got that. I've still got mine. That didn't get taken away.
I sold that when I left Perth, so somebody in Perth has it now. Eric. First up, Eric managed to find the Chief brand projector vibration isolator we suggested from a seller on eBay for under $100. So he bought it and is awaiting delivery. Fingers crossed that it finally solves his issue. I guess this guy with the vibrating projector thingy.
That's right. Out in his converted garage, and so the whole thing shakes rather easily with his subs. He had the Peerless anti-vibration ceiling mount, which honestly, like I say from the video, was doing its job. It stopped the vibrations quite quickly, but it didn't prevent all the vibrations. Right. So if this Chief anti-vibration isolator doesn't do the trick, then just it is not cheap. He found it at a really nice price.
He found it at a good price, but the MSRP is not great. No. So he's got to send CMT 340 speakers, first gen, not SE, or the brand new SE2 versions up front, and has been making do with his Polk FXI A6 surrounds. I have no idea what those are anyways. We had recommended Ascend HDM 200 SE speakers for surrounds that he could mount on his sidewalls. He does not want in-wall speakers. Good. But it would be helpful if the surround speakers could stick out from the wall as little as possible. Do we think Monoprice's Monolith THX MOW1 on walls might be a good option and match for his fronts? I don't remember, but I'm guessing yes.
I wouldn't
Sidewalls
have
well.
any issue with them in terms of timbre match or anything like that. It's just they're only an inch and a half shallower, which, I mean, that's not nothing. They do have a convenient keyhole mount on the back. So, look, I don't have any problem with them. I'm not, if you look at the frequency response, I wouldn't anticipate that these, as your surrounds, would be any sort of problem as far as the timbre match goes. They are a significantly different sensitivity, though, and that concerns me a little bit, because the CMT340s, even the first gen, they're a pretty sensitive speaker. And they are an 8 ohm load. These monoprice monolith on walls, they are a 4 ohm load, and they're relatively low sensitivity, if we're being honest.
Yeah, but he's not going to be sitting that far away from
You're not
him,
sitting that far. It's not going to be a problem where you're unable to compensate for it in your trim levels. But I'm just saying, all the minor misgivings I might have about it, I'm just, inch and a half, the HDM 200 SE is really not going to fit, but I wouldn't have any issue with this.
As far as sonic matches, I think these will be
That's
fine.
right.
So, yeah. One thing about monoprice you have to worry about is them making super attractive anything. They're just black
Plain
boxes.
Black. Plain black.
So he's been considering switching from the DIY solid projection screen to a DIY acoustically transparent screen. He would like to keep the same frame, but he'd be able to move it closer, put his speakers behind it, and he'd almost certainly use Center Stage XD or UF fabric from Seymour AV after getting some great customer service from them and finding their samples very enticing. He's thinking to sell his wife on the idea by saying it would be safer for their toddler and no visible speakers on stands at the front of the room to potentially fall over. And then he's also thinking he could replace his CMT 340 center, which has a modified crossover versus the left and right CMT 340s. Maybe get all three new front speakers, all vertical and identical. Just in general, what would be the pluses and minuses of the whole idea? Would there be a noticeable improvement? You're not talking about a sonic improvement. That's not what you're talking about.
Well,
here.
I mean, look, the notion is out there that the only way to go, if you can, is the center speaker at ear height, vertical, just like your front, left, and right. So he's coming from an honest place.
It's ironic that I started this not ironic, maybe coincidental that I started this entire podcast off railing against acoustically transparent screens, and then we're going to get more acoustically transparent screen questions later on. You're not talking to me, you're not actually talking about a sonic improvement. Okay, you're talking about quality of life or a visual improvement or an aesthetic improvement here. Mm-hmm. So if you're not going to upgrade your speakers significantly, which you're not talking about doing, if you're going this direction, you could just get those monoprice ones for everything. And then
you could.
You were just
that wouldn't be an upgrade from what you have.
It would not be an upgrade.
No,
but you could put them behind the screen a lot easier.
Yep. Everything mounted on the wall, wouldn't need a very thick false wall at all.
Right. And maybe not even a false wall. Maybe you just offset the screen forward on the wall using 2x4s or whatever. Yep. Some sort of bracing behind it just to offset it enough so that you can hang the speakers behind it. That would be fine. Mm-hmm. It's not going to be a sonic improvement. And I don't think I don't care what Reddit says, moving your center channel from lower to the middle of your screen doesn't better anchor the audio at all.
Outside of the outliers, right? You got the 160-inch screen. Your center is literally forced onto the floor.
Yeah.
Now I want to go acoustically transparent and raise that center speaker up without question, right? But I don't think he's into that type of scenario.
Yeah.
He's not changing his screen size. He might change his field of view a bit by virtue of physically moving the screen a bit closer. Sure. But that would be about it.
Yeah. So you're not really talking about. So the pluses and minuses, the plus is that it would be a cleaner look. Mm-hmm. The minus is that it's going to cost money and it won't sound any better. So, is that enough? It's up to you. It's completely up to you.
If you want, because, getting the screen fabric from Seymour AV, I mean, obviously it's not $0, but it's not crazy expensive. It's really quite reasonable to get just the raw fabric. You already have the DIY frame that you're not intending to change. So it's not as though this is crazy outlay of cash and effort that he's going to make to do this with the screen. It would let you get the larger field of view. Now, I think his plan is to put all three of the speakers behind the screen, at which point you're going to want to go for a pretty big field of view. Do you really want to do that? You want to go greater than 45-degree field of view if you're going to have all three of your speakers behind the screen.
If you put all three of them behind the screen and the screen isn't wider than your couch, then you are creating less, a narrower soundstage up front, to the point where, depending on how small it is in your field of view, it could almost sound like mono. Like you almost get no panning going left to right up there or right to left because of how close all the speakers are. I mean, you get some because of the phase changing and stuff like that,
right.
but it's not going to be, let's say, optimal, especially for 2-channel music.
But like,
and that sort of thing.
there's no reason you need to change your CMT 340 speakers.
No.
I mean, if you want to go to something completely different, that's a whole other kettle of fish. But there's no sonic reason you need to. You can keep your CMT 340 center.
Yeah.
You could put it at ear height behind the acoustically transparent screen. It's going to sound as great as it does right now. It's not going to make a gigantic, significant difference in that way. So look, this isn't like, I'm not saying no to this.
No, I'm not saying no either.
Reasons.
You just need to have the right reasons.
Yeah. But is this going to make a transform your audio situation? No.
Not at all. Blake has 1,000 square foot L-shaped basement that is open to the whole thing. So it's not 1,000 square foot. It's infinity square feet.
No, it's 1,000 square feet. That's
the whole. That is the whole thing.
That's the basement.
Okay. He's
square feet.
Set up a 7.2.4 SVS system in the long portion of the L shape, and he's got a pair of PB4000 subs that nicely fill the entire basement with bass.
Nice.
He's now setting up a home office area, and the short portion of the L. He'd like to have just a 2-channel speaker set up for this computer. He wants them for playing some background music while he works, and also for editing audio tracks. So good accuracy is important. He'd also like to be able to wall mount them. And he doesn't really want to spend more than $500. Closer to $300 would be nice. So he'd like a clean look, and he isn't super keen on needing an additional amplifier. So, my God, dude, I cannot express to you how little I'm behind this idea. So let's just go forward, and I'll tell you what I think. So should he get self-powered speakers? He's never really had any before. What would we recommend? Should you get regular speakers, maybe SVS bookshelves, and a small Fosse amp to power them instead? Maybe you could have an FM tuner built into a small amplifier if you went that route. So Monoprice just released like some ridiculously large bookshelf, like powered bookshelf speakers for your
Sure.
desktop. I have no idea how much they cost, but all of this, everything that you're talking about, background music mixing, right? The audio, editing
when
audio
he's
tracks.
At his computer.
When you're at your computer and everything. All of that screams to me. And your price point, headphones. Why are you not just getting a good set? Like everything that you want, you can get better if you get a good set of headphones for $500. A $500 pair of headphones is a phenomenal pair of headphones. A $500 pair of powered bookshelf speakers is a fairly okay pair of bookshelf speakers. I mean, they might be great, but they're not going to be like, let's audio edit great. I would go.
Well, you can audio edit on what I'm going to recommend.
Well, that's fine, but I'm saying that you could audio edit better with a nice pair of open back planar magnetic $500 headphones.
Yeah, some hi-fi mans. You could go for some hi-fi mans.
Every day, all day. That eliminates all the rest of this nonsense that you need, the wall mounts and that us suggesting, well, you probably still need a sub, and then everything else.
Well, he's got a question about that, so yeah, but to answer the question as wrote, I would point you to Audio Engine. I would point you to their A5 Plus self-powered speakers. That is absolutely the way I would go for a desktop setup. They're $400 for the pair. They have a $500 per pair version that just builds in Bluetooth. I don't really see why you need that for $100 more. So these ones on the back of them, they don't have like an integrated wall mount of their own. So what I would recommend getting there is just the side clamping wall mounts from Mount It. They go for $38 for a pair for the SB37s from Mount It, the side clamping wall mounts. So that would let you position them, angle them, tilt them, rotate them, however you need to get them perfectly set up on either side of your computer monitors. And Audio Engine's A5 Plus are where I would point you.
So I'm going to link up these Monoprice ones. They're stupid large. They are they're $400. They are stupid large, and maybe you can get away with not having the sub, which we're going to be talking about. I don't really know what their specifications are. Where are the specs? That keeps moving on me. They're rated down to 50, so that's pretty low. If he ends up wanting more bass, is there a way to connect these computer speakers to his existing PB4000s? Would it be okay for his PB4000s to be connected to both his theater system and the computer speakers? I mean, you can always just swap out a cable to the subwoofer that's closest to you. I mean,
yeah,
you could.
So I mean,
that's the way I would do it.
If you go with the audio engines that I talk about, they do just have line out outputs on the back of there that can feed a subwoofer. That's no problem. It would be like physically fine to have, you know, the subwoofer cable from your home theater system plugged into, say, the left input on your subwoofer, and then have the line out from the audio engine plugged into the right input on the subwoofer. It's perfectly capable of taking two signals, you know, from two channels at once. That's not going to hurt the subwoofer in any way or anything like that. So physically, it's all fine to do. The only issue is, you know, your subwoofer is going to have its volume and its crossover set for your home theater system, and you would likely need to change both of those things when you're using them for the computer speakers. Now, SVS, you've got the app. So changing it, you can have two presets in the app. So changing it is not massively difficult. You would have to bring up the app, change the preset. It's not automatic and nothing for you to do, but it's not like crazy headache to set up the two presets and switch them in the app. So I think this is all doable if you end up wanting to do it.
Those monopriceless ones, they're the what are they called? MTM 100. So they have Bluetooth, they have aptX, they have a subwoofer output, they have, it looks like, I can't really read this stupid thing. They've got an optical and RCA ends as well as a subwoofer output. I don't know how the subwoofer output works because I haven't looked at these closely, but they have side firing woofers. They're stupid big, but they would do all the things that you want to. And again, they're the same price as the audio engine, but you're getting a lot more speaker for it. So I don't know how they sound. I just
have no idea how they sound. That's the only problem. I'll vouch for the audio engines. I have no idea about those mono prices.
And I like the audio engines too. I don't know which ones I have anymore. One of them broke, but whatever. Robert in Perth. Robert's Denon X3600H receiver is having a bit of a weird problem. Once in a while, for no reason he can discern, it will put itself into Audyssey setup mode at random. There's often a loud thump when it does so. Sometimes he can back out, but then he isn't able to change the volume anymore. Most of the time, he just needs to turn the receiver off and the back on again, and it works fine. It doesn't shut itself off. It just randomly goes into Audyssey setup mode. Sometimes it just flicks into that mode for a second. He hasn't touched anything in the system for ages, so any ideas what could be a problem? Dust in the 2.5 millimeter jack that the little microphone Audyssey input jack on the front panel plugs into. Get some compressed air, blow that out. Take, if you can pull your receiver, you have access to the top of your receiver, blow all that out too. Like just clean everything as best as you can.
Yep.
And I would bet your problem magically goes away.
Yeah, you'll notice that if you take the included Audyssey microphone, plug it into that microphone input jack on the front panel, it'll automatically go into Audyssey setup mode. You don't have to press any buttons or say it's Audyssey time. Just plugging in the microphone makes it do that. So that makes me think there's an electrical trip happening inside of that little microphone jack. Spider silk conducts electricity. There are teeny tiny little spiders in this world that could easily have made its way into the
living
little microphone
in your
jack
ears.
thing. But any type of debris, dust, spider silk, whatever it might be that could, you said you haven't touched your system in a long, long time. It doesn't mean you're dirty. It doesn't mean you're a person who doesn't take care of their equipment. Super easy to have a little bit of debris build up in there, or spider silk, like I say, which is electrically conductive, and it doesn't take much. So it sounds to me like it's something like that.
That would be my guess.
Yeah.
Mike's room is about 13 by 23 with 10-foot ceilings. During the daytime, there's a little bit of ambient light. Can't make the room pitch black, but it's dim, and it's basically completely black at night. Most of his TV and movie watching would be at night. So with a budget of about $5,000, and I know what you're gonna say because you sent it to me. You texted it to me. Okay, just so everybody knows, Rob is very much invested in me buying an OLED. Okay, in case you're wondering, all right? And my wife...
No, that wasn't an OLED that I texted to.
Whatever. But my wife is very much invested in me not spending any money.
There's that.
Because we've got kids that are going to colleges and stuff like that, and we have to worry about, money's tight. And spending $3,000 to $5,000 on a display is not in the budget. Mm-hmm. I will say, though, the next time a bulb goes out on this projector, I'm going to be heavily pushing for an upgrade. But we will see. Anyway, so with a budget of about $5,000 max and a seating distance anywhere from 9 to 11 feet. Should you go for an 83-inch OLED, or should you get an ultra short throw projector with a UST screen? He can't really sit closer than 9 feet, and they just don't want to rearrange the furniture and getting rid of the coffee table to move the couch any get rid of the coffee table to move the couch any closer than that. I wrote an article about why you won't make your room better for audio, and it's all about the sunk cost fallacy, and this exactly plays into that, because people they look at their rooms, they're like, I can't change any of this, and it's like, it's ludicrous. You absolutely can change it, right? There is nothing physically stopping you from changing it, except that not only do you see the effort that you would have to put into doing it, but you see the effort that you already put into putting each one of those items there, and that effort is like inertia for you. It's like, I will have wasted that effort if I change anything. And people are just they just can't fathom the thought. So the idea that you cannot sit closer than 9 feet is wrong. You absolutely can. You just don't want
even
to.
Even if he sits, like, I'm picturing that he's thinking wall mounting in either case, right? Because I'm assuming if he went for an ultra short throw projector, that 120-inch screen that he's thinking of is going to be mounted on the wall. It's not going to be on a stand. But if you're going with a television, right? Like, let's say you're 9 feet from the seats to the wall. Now, you can get the 83-inch OLED 1 foot closer to you. Didn't touch the seats. Relative to the wall, the seat stayed the same, but it's quite easy to get that TV screen 1 foot closer to your face, right? Rather than mounting it on the wall, you put it on a TV stand, or you still mount it on the wall, but you just have an articulating mount that you can pull out 1 foot. That is definitely doable. And 8 feet from the 83-inch screen is very close to the same field of view as 120 inches from 11 feet, which was sort of the other scenario you're looking at. So I'm like, look, the image quality between an 83-inch OLED versus any of the 5,000, like, we're not talking a $5,000 ultra short throw projector, because you got to have the screen in there, and the cheapest ultra short throw screens are about $1,500 for the 120-inch size. So we're talking a $3,500 ultra short throw projector. He even linked to one that's $3,000. I'm like, I know people are raving about them. I don't dislike them. I think the ultra short throw projectors are pretty cool, and it's kind of amazing that we can get this at this sort of price, and it's watchable with some ambient light. I don't think it looks great. They only ever show you the really bright, vibrant images in any of the demos, and it's like, we're not watching Game of Thrones on this thing during the day. You will see nothing on an ultra short throw projector. On the OLED, you'll see it all. So it's like, the image quality difference is massive. It's massive between the ultra short throw projector at this price point, at any price point, honestly. Even the $30,000 laser driven ultra short throws don't look like an OLED. So it's really tough for me to say anything other than get the 83-inch OLED and wall mounted on an articulating mount, or better yet, just put it on a TV stand and have the screen 1 foot closer than you thought it was going to be. And now you got the same field of view. That's my take on this one.
Yeah, I agree with that. Mike says, so you say you build a false wall with a pretty large area behind it. Do you just treat the physical front wall behind the screen with regular absorption panels? Do you cover the front wall with base straps? Do they just go between in between the speakers, or just in general, what do you do back there?
Fill it up.
All of it. Can we do all of it? Can it just be insulation from like the screen straight back?
You don't need panels. They don't have to be covered in cloth. They don't have to have frames. You can just put raw insulation back there. It's all visually hidden for you. Yeah. If you go with the rock wool, that's not good. If you're worried about light getting through the screen and reflecting off what's back there, the rock wool is a very dull, matte gray type of color, and it's not gonna be any sort of issue of reflecting light back to you. So I mean, look, it can be expensive if you've got a fairly deep false wall. You're not necessarily gonna be literally filling the entire thing with rock wool insulation, but it's like, basically, as much as you can put back there, put it back there, and you don't have to be pretty about it, and it doesn't have to be finished panels at all. Just get some big old bat insulation just in the big packages you get at the Home Depot. You put as much as you can in there, more or less.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how big of an area he's talking about back there. I mean,
Right.
he's talking about a couple of feet, or is he talking about like another whole room? In which case,
right.
like, it's like anechoic chamber on that side. That's it's just 8 straight feet of insulation.
But like in any room in a house, you basically can't have too much base trapping.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen. So
Right.
as much insulation as you can reasonably afford and put in there, that's what you want to do.
Yeah. So for any nooks or closet space or other alcove like that, do you just throw a bunch of insulation in there, or does it need to be more strategic? Again, the only thing you would really worry about is like windows, or any sort of, you don't want to.
That's not an acoustic thing. That's a moisture
That's
thing.
a moisture thing, right? You don't want to trap moisture between the
Yeah.
windows and the insulation that's
You
back
do
there.
not.
But if it just say you just have like a cutout in your room and it's just like this
Yeah.
little bump in and it's just there because whatever, and you're like, well, I could just make this wall look flat by putting some fabric over it or something like that, or a top to bottom panel. What should I put behind it, the alcove? And you're not going to put anything else like gear or something like that, or hide
Right.
anything back there. Yeah, just throw some insulation in there, top floor to ceiling.
Now that one, we're not worried about any light getting in there behind a projection screen or anything
Yeah.
like that. That one, you use the cheapest insulation
Yeah.
you can find. The fluffy white stuff they put above garages that costs pennies on the pound. Like that's all you do in there. You let it lay in there all floppy and whatever, and you don't worry about it. It's visually hidden by a nice, acoustically transparent piece of fabric on top
That's
of it.
right. What are we doing on time here?
We're doing all right.
Yep, we're doing
we can
all
get
right.
a couple more, yeah.
Brandon's question came up the week Tom was away. I was away. So Lee and Rob weighed in. I don't know who this Lee person is and why he keeps coming up in these things. At one of his workplaces, he's got an attached studio apartment where he stays a couple of days a week. He wanted our thoughts on which orientation would work best for a theater setup. And he agreed with Rob and Lee's take that setting it up lengthwise with the kitchenette at the back and the bed behind the couch makes the most sense. But just to be thorough, does Tom agree? What? There's a kitchen. There's the thing. What?
So yeah,
Oh,
the
I
first
see.
image here. Yeah, this is the lengthwise in terms of the dimensions of the room. But in the picture, you've got the TV on the left side when we're looking at the diagram that he's written it so that the words aren't all strange. Sofa that's what about 6.5 feet he's got right on there. Bed right behind that, little bit of space, and then the kitchenette behind all of that. Then his alternative was setting things up widthwise, so that you would come in, the bed would be as you're coming into the room, sofa would be beside that, TV would be on the long wall, and the kitchenette would be over to your left. So we were looking at that, we're like, well, livability, I said livability, the widthwise probably looks more like your typical studio apartment setup, but if we're living like a bachelor pad, and he's like, yep, he's married and has kids, but when he's over there, he's basically living like a bachelor pad. I'm like, audio-wise, the lengthwise setup works better. So he agrees with that. But what does Tom think? Does Tom agree the lengthwise setup versus the widthwise?
I don't want to walk in next to my bed. That's kind of where I fall on this whole thing.
Lee like that too. Walk into the living room as such as it is.
Yeah. I can't. I mean, I'm not making my bed. Number one. Number two, I'd rather walk in and see my TV and everything else.
There you go.
Than this.
And
And
we're
plus,
also like,
audio
it's more
wise, you're
symmetrical
not
that
against.
way.
Yeah,
you
you're
have
not
room
against the
behind
wall.
your seats. Yeah.
Yeah. So you wanted the slim, attractive on-wall speakers that still sound great. Rob suggested the Focal 301s, and he really likes the look of those. Now he wants to decide on in-ceiling speakers for Atmos. Focal has so many to choose from. He'd like to keep the price under $400 per speaker.
Tough with Focal.
Yeah, I was going to say, why are you... Yeah, okay. The way this studio apartment was constructed, he has a soundproof outer shell built with soundproofing company's advice, and then there's basically the space of a standard 2x4 wall within that, 3/8 of an inch, or 3/5/8 of an inch. 3
3
feet,
and 5/8.
3 5/8 of an inch. Including on the ceiling with ensemble acoustically transparent drywall for the visible finish. There's 3-inch thick insulation between the outer shell and the acoustically transparent drywall. Acoustically transparent drywall?
That was the whole thing, yes. He's really, really happy with this ensemble acoustically transparent drywall. He, in fact, traveled to learn how to finish it because there's a special finishing process. So he's like, yep, it looks like drywall, but it's acoustically transparent. And he loves it.
All right, so the in-ceiling speakers can be installed into the acoustically transparent drywall without putting any holes in the soundproofing shell, as long as they're shallow enough to fit in the depth of a 2x4. Again, it's all filled with insulation between the acoustically transparent drywall and the shell, so would he still need backer boxes? Doesn't seem like any of those would fit, not without putting holes in the shell. Do you need backer boxes?
These are Atmos speakers.
I mean,
like, and it's all filled with insulation, like rigid insulation.
The only thing I would be worried about is just the the insulation getting into the mechanical parts
true
of
enough, yes.
So, do you need a actual physical backer box that would, that is the right size and everything else that is supposed to be? I don't know. Would I want something between the speaker and the insulation? I think the answer to that question is
yes.
Yes.
I think that can be self-constructed.
Right.
That doesn't have to be a pre-made, prefabricated thing that you could just construct yourself. We're literally talking about a little bit of plywood or OBS or something.
Right.
Or OSB, not OBS. I'm looking at OBS on my window here. OSB is what I meant to say. But yeah, there's a little bit of an issue here because you don't genuinely have a 2x4 plus drywall thickness. It's slightly short of that. Now, if you're just talking about which of Focal's in-ceiling speakers use the exact same driver technology as the Focal 301 on-wall speakers, that would be their ICW6. They are available from Accessories for Less at a lower than MSRP price, but they're still at $450 each for the Focal ICW6s. But that's the exact same driver technology as the on-wall speakers that you're going for. But the depth, I don't know. Like at the very least, the back of that speaker, which is open, would be pushed right against your outer shell finishing. Like that, you would have zero clearance space, and it might not even completely fit without protruding just a tiny little bit because it's a 3-inch cavity that you have rather than a 3.5-inch. And unfortunately, that 1/2 inch is making a difference in this instance. When we're talking getting things that close. So I think the safe answer is Kef, who are kind of masters of super flat speakers that still sound not fantastic, but for Atmos purposes, I have zero problem suggesting it. So Kef's CI160TR. Retail price on those is $350 each. They're not cheap, but honestly, they're probably a little bit overpriced, but it fits within the budget that you were talking about. Now, those things are like 1.5 inches deep. So they are definitely going to fit without you having to worry about coming up against the shell. They also leave you enough space to make a backer box for them, if for nothing else, just to keep the insulation from ever potentially getting into the back of these things, just like Tom talked about. So I think those Kef CI160TRs are a better choice. They don't have tremendous bass extension. They really only go down to about 110 hertz. That's all you really kind of want and need for Atmos speakers in your ceiling anyways. So I'm just putting all the pieces together, and I think those might be a good solution here.
Yeah, I'm looking at some of the monoprice in ceiling speakers, just trying to get an idea. The caliber ones, I know those aren't the ones we normally recommend, but this is Atmos. Who cares? Those are 2.8 inches deep.
Okay.
So that
would work.
4102, 4103. The other ones in the caliber line are bigger. They are 3.5. 3.6.
Yeah, like I looked up the Sonance Mag 6s that I talk about all the time, but they are, in fact, deeper than the Focals. So physically, those would be a challenge. But yeah, if those monoprice ones work, that's
so the caliber ones would work. And they're not super, they're like $60. I mean, they're really cheap. Yeah. So you could definitely make one of those work. And again, I know we're like, oh my God, we got to get matchings. No, you don't have to get matching Atmos speakers. No one cares. Literally, they don't do anything there.
Accessories for Less did have those Kef CI160TRs, but they got super low stock right now. They've got them when they have them for $220 each. So that makes them much more reasonable and affordable. And they might get more in stock. They often do restock on those things. So it's not out of the question to just give Accessories for Less a call and see if you could get 4 of those.
Ilango. So a full house renovation will be starting soon at Ilango's place. Many of the ceilings will be coming down. The rest will get refinished. So he has plenty of free reign when it comes to putting in-ceiling speakers all over the place for his whole house audio. He figures he'll have 12 or 13 pairs of Sonance Mag 6 in-ceiling speakers spread around. He already owns some, along with the retrofit back cans. We always recommend to go with them. He does feel the small back cans reduce the bass output a bit as compared to the full-size backer boxes. The wooden backer boxes that Sonos sells are kind of expensive, and with most of the ceilings open, he figures DIY backer boxes wouldn't be difficult at all. So, should he hold on to the retrofit back cans he already owns and try to use them in some of the rooms, or would it be better to make full-size backer boxes for all the in-ceiling speakers, maybe try to sell the back cans? If your ceilings are open, and I would just make the backer boxes for everything, and then keep those retro ones, because inevitably you're either going to, like, can you sell them? Yes. And should you sell them? Maybe. But you might just want to keep some of them around in case you're like, oh, you know what? I do want some speakers in this bathroom. Or I do want some speakers in this room. Oh, I do want to add top
you buy a couple more Mag 6s in the not so distant future, and you're like, oh, I already got the retrofit cans, and it's going to be easy. Or he was like, most of the ceiling coming down. Sounds like not literally all. So maybe you'll run into a room or two where you're like, but it'd be a lot easier if I didn't have to cut a big hole. Like I can just do the actual proper sized hole for this in-ceiling speaker, and you still got the retrofit back cans. Yeah. Thankfully, the retrofit back cans are not crazy expensive. So either way, I don't think this is, too much. I think he was mostly thinking like, am I going to get such a performance benefit from going, well, actually, I think that was his next question, right? Yeah. If he goes with the fuller size backer boxes, there's such a sonic benefit that it's going to be worth it no matter the situation. Like, I don't think so. Like this is whole house audio. Yeah. Are you critically listening to the bass output in whatever room where the ceiling isn't coming down? Like, to me, it's not worth the hassle. I would just use the retrofit there. You already know what the dimensions of the full-size wooden backer boxes are, so making that DIY really shouldn't be a problem in the rooms where the ceiling is completely pulled down. That should be entirely doable. That's what I would do.
So he says when making the backer boxes, can he just put in blocking and use the existing joists and subfloor above as 3 of the backer box walls? Or does he need a full box on its own? I would totally do that.
Well, I mean, it depends. Are you doing it just for the sonic benefit of the driver itself, or are you doing it to stop sound transmission between floors and rooms? Because if you're doing it to stop sound transmission, then you need the full box.
That's
because
true.
Using the existing structure isn't going to help you as far as mitigating sound transmission. But if this is already the top floor...
but if his drywall is, mechanically coupled to the joists anyways, it's still going to have some transference no matter how you do it. But yes, the key would be, if you're going to use it with the stuff that's existing there, which you can, and again, like for some people, like if this is a basement, for some people are like, I don't care if sound transmits upstairs because all the bedrooms
that's what you often do for in wall speakers, right? In wall speakers, you'll just put the blocking above and below that isn't already there, so that you're creating the right size cavity for what's essentially a sealed speaker box is what you're creating out of there. But that doesn't address sound transmission. So that's really the only question. I think it's fairly simple. If you are trying to mitigate sound transmission, you'll want to have the whole box.
That's right. Just make sure that you're sealing all the edges with acoustic caulk and all that stuff. And then you do, I would fill it up with some,
put some insulation in there,
polyfill, whatever the cotton stuff is that they use in the speakers. Last question, Infinite Gary. How do we account for the fascination with vinyl records and turntables these days? Stupidity. That's how I account for it. People are dumb and gullible. I'm not.
Tom's back pulling punches all over the place.
I'm not being sarcastic. I honestly think it's just gullibility. People somebody says turntables are better, and then everybody believes it for a while, and then they get them, and they are like, oh, no, they're not. It's crap. And then they get rid of them, and then 20 years later, somebody says turntables are the best, and everybody goes out and buys them again. It's just a thing. Anyways, he's got a couple himself. He just loves the looks. As we know, he likes to try lots of stuff, so turntables are included in that. He enjoys comparing different cartridges, and sometimes he'll find a combination along with a particular record that just sounds amazing and so pleasing that he wouldn't trade it for any other format. And then there's a crowd that is doing it for nostalgia, that he understands. But there's a younger crowd that is into vinyl too. It isn't nostalgia for them. Maybe it's just cool, something different from their phones. Gen Zs are adults now, and it's interesting that they've sort of grown up with vinyl. So maybe it's partly a continuation of that too. So what's our thoughts? Again, I mean, I think the trends are trends, and that's what this is. It's just another trend.
And honestly, It isn't actually nearly as widespread as vinyl enthusiasts always try to trumpet and make it out to be.
Not.
The vast majority of people are still not buying turntables and vinyl records.
And the ones that have bought them, maybe set them up, maybe listened to them a couple of times and went, and then it just sits there. Looking cool.
Oh yeah,
it's just a piece of
how
of decor.
How often do you really come back to the vinyl album versus just playing the digital download version that came, like, you get the code when you buy the album version, right? You always get the digital download code along with it. How often are people genuinely going back to it more than once or twice? But no, I mean, like, there is this thing out there in the, you know, more sort of audio community where it's like, it's just a given now that vinyl's the best. And like, that's, if you want the best music sound, of course it's going to be vinyl. And then all these other things, we'll compromise on the digital versions. But of course, if you want the very best, you're going to get the vinyl. I'm like, that is utterly ridiculous. Vinyl was made to be a cheap, mass-produced, essentially almost disposable format when it was developed. That was the whole idea.
Every time you listen to it, it gets worse.
It gets a little worse every time, you know, and this, all of this stuff about, oh, I can make these changes to my turntable. I can upgrade my turntable and I can hear the differences. Yeah, that's because it's an incredibly flawed format, technically. Now, I agree. There are some vinyl record albums that, if they made a CD version at all, if they made a digital version at all, it wasn't really very good, like particularly a lot of the early ones, where the first CDs that came out, some of them sounded pretty awful. And there was no question that the vinyl version that existed before them sounded better. Or there's lots of vinyl records that there never was a digital version made of them. You know, maybe now somebody has one and digitizes it, but there was never like a studio-made version. And so, I mean, there are plenty of instances where I'll be like, yeah, there are certain vinyl records where I think that's the best format available out of what's out there. But in terms of like, this is the way it should be, this now bizarre idea that it's just a given that that's the best sound, completely ridiculous. I agree to an extent with Tom that like a lot of it is just, that's what people said, so I guess it's true, you know. But I think it's good to take a step back and realize that as much as in the enthusiast community they love to trumpet, it's this comeback, it's this resurgent, young people are into it. I'm like, no, it's still a really, really tiny number of people who are doing vinyl.
Infinitesimal. Okay. One of the larger vinyl retailers, like physical stores, is in town here. Mm-hmm. And it's in a building that has other businesses in it. And you know what it hasn't done over the last 10 years or however long the resurgence has been going on? It hasn't gotten any bigger. They haven't expanded. They haven't added to their square footage. It's the same size store as it always was. Mm-hmm. And they sell online. They do a bunch of other stuff, and they're still not expanding. I've never been in there. Never talked to them. But if vinyl was so popular, you would think they would be, you know, just blowing up.
For the esoteric companies that are charging, you know, $70,000 for a turntable without a tone arm, and then it's another $70,000 for the tone arm.
They just have to sell one, okay? One a year.
I don't blame them. You got people who are crazy enough to do that on a mass-produced, super cheap, breaks easily, degrades every time you play it format. I mean, hey, more power to you.
Gary came across some Technics SB7070 linear phase speakers from 1978. Just why? Anyways, it looks like somebody stacked a bunch of boxes on top of each other.
Four individual boxes with a big old fat woofer on the bottom serving as the bass, and then a
front port, I think.
Bass. Yeah. Is that a mid-bass driver, a mid-range driver, and a tweeter, or maybe it's a mid-range driver, a tweeter, and a super tweeter?
I doubt it's a super tweeter. From 1978, I would doubt it would
these are increasingly sized boxes from top to bottom, physical different sizes if you're not seeing the image, and then they're arrayed so that the largest driver is physically forward, and then the next largest driver is a little distance behind that, and the next driver is a little behind that. Yes, supposedly the time alignment. Yes, indeed. Yeah.
He asked, why don't we see speakers that look like that anymore? What has improved in terms of speaker development that this design is stick around? It's freaking ugly.
We started measuring too. Was also something that we started doing. Well, we started measuring.
We do see designs like this. It's from Thiel.
Yeah, they're out there. Yeah.
Yeah, the laid back speakers. You know, Thiel and some of those guys they still have those speaker
Well, heck,
designs.
even Focal to some degree, it's not this, but they have the curved face so that the tweeter is back, and then the mid-range drivers are a little forward, and then the woofers are forward of that.
Inside
curved face.
many tower speakers, each driver has its own cabinet. You don't see it anymore because this is ugly as hell. Okay? It's ugly. No one wants the speaker because it's ugly. And that's why we don't see it anymore. But we do see, like, RBH was famous in, like, their speaker designs. When you would open up their cabinets, every driver's got its own cabinet in there. And, like, the base, the port would be way near the top because the driver would have the entire bottom of the cabinet plus up the back of the cabinet to fill as part of its enclosure.
Well, yeah, when you're going to make a multi-way speaker with, good crossovers and that, like having independently sealed drivers makes sense because you have the more predictable roll-off on the bottom end inside of a sealed cabinet versus you're not dealing with any sort of group delay type of things that you had if you have a shared port among multiple drivers. You don't have intermodulation distortion happening inside of the cabinet on the backs of the drivers. Like, if you just seal up all the components, that's quite reasonable. So I mean, this is just making it very visible from the outside, but that does still exist on the inside of many speakers today. And this raked back design it does still exist. It's not really necessary. And like I say, we started measuring speakers. That's why they don't look exactly like this anymore. This was an idea brought to life, right? Somebody said, the high frequencies, they're coming out at they're a higher frequency, right? So they must come out faster than the lower frequencies.
Because the speed of sound is predicated on the frequency.
Sure. Yeah.
That's how sound works.
Little birdies go faster than giant elephants, right? That's just the way it works. So, if you got a tweeter and a woofer, you gotta give the woofer a head start. That's the only way they're going to arrive at the same time. That's the idea here. Then we measured. We're like, we don't really need that.
Yeah, that's kind of dumb. All right. And it's ugly. I can't stress enough how important it is to sell speakers that don't look like boxes stacked on boxes. It's a very important part of this. Plus, they're not even taking into account the refraction off the box in front of it. We're like, pull your center channel to the front of your
Everything's
cabinet.
got a shelf in front of it,
right?
Except for the big woofer.
Everything else, and this stupid speaker has got like just shelves. It's built-in shelves.
That's right.
Why don't they make that anymore, Gary? I don't know. Because it's dumb. That's why. All right, who do we have left?
We have on our list Dan and Julian. I think that's it. Is that it? Yep, Dan and Julian. They will be first up next week.
All right. We want to thank our listeners of the week. We want to thank John for going to avrant.com and clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link and leaving us a PayPal donation, as well as our 140 patrons over at patreon.com, including Karl.
That's right, John. Thank you very much for the PayPal donation, and patreon.com/AVRant podcast is where you can go to sign up to make an automatic monthly donation if you haven't already done so. But 140 people have already done so, including Karl M. So thank you all very much for the financial support.
So close to 150. Right there. We also want to thank Dale and Brannon for talking us up to SVS, as well as
indeed.
Brannon for sending me photos with permission to use them on AV Gadgets.
Thank you, Dale. Thank you, Brannon.
And we got some notes of gratitude, so we want to thank you for thanking us to Ryan, Jay, Eric, Robert, Jonathan, Ken, Brannon, Dan, Julian, Karl, Jorge, and Greg.
That is the list. I'll say the names one more time. Ryan, Jay, Eric, Robert, Jonathan, Ken, Brannon, Dan, Julian, Karl M, Jorge, and Greg L. Thank you all very much for the notes of gratitude and encouragement. We appreciate them, and we thank everybody who continues to listen and send in your questions.
If you want to get your question answered, all you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. For AVRant, I'm Tom Antry.
And I'm Rob H. Now stay in and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.